So we are officially reconvened, and we're going to start the process as described before we took our break to work through the details and have a good dialogue back and forth about where we might land with these numbers. So as a starting point, and happy to move in a different direction if you guys would like. Molly, I think we should be able to see first. I did want to share with everyone what those priority areas were that we had described. Yep. So maybe as a starting point, and are you sharing your screen right now? Yep. Okay, great. So for folks that are online and in person, we have taken a first pass at using the framework priorities as redefined this morning to code these by priority areas. So you can see that with the allocations that have already happened. So those include lines 4 through 12. You still have the outstanding proposal, which is at line 13, the 12.5 million, and then the rest of the new proposals for how to spend remaining budget. Again, we've coded these by priority area as defined by the Assembly and as agreed to this morning. So we can come back to that, and after we talk about specific proposals, we could certainly put those into a pivot table and look at the chart of how the allocations are splitting out right now. So we haven't done that exercise yet. But that gives you a broad sense of how they are currently categorized, and happy to hear any pushback on that. So we could talk about that, or we could just jump right into the details as we had promised everybody. Yeah, Chris, you've got a comment.
If it wouldn't be too difficult, it would be nice to sort them by the framework of priority status so that we can see them.
Actually, well, you can't do that for all of them, though. We don't want to do it for the full list, because we have ones that have already been funded and those that have not. Okay. So there should be, yeah, so we want some way to see those that have already been funded, sorted, and then those that have not sorted.
Yeah, thanks. That'll help us to see, like the pivot table, just visually here where we're focusing.
Gotcha. Okay, so it might take a moment for us to wrangle a little bit with this spreadsheet, but I wonder if there is a burning comment, question, and proposal that folks have had the opportunity to talk with your colleagues about over the break and would like to bring a revised proposal to the table. Yes, Forrest, and then Meg.
This is Meg's idea. Think you want to do it instead?
No, go ahead. I have a different one.
So Meg had, I think, a great idea. Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. also had a great idea, which I ran by the administration, and I think we should consider it, and I think it feeds into everything else. So the 25% FEMA match, which is $8.5 million, there's no reason it has to come from this pot of money. That is to say, we have built in this contingency of almost $40 million in payment 2 and payment 3. And I would prefer if we took this out and spread it amongst those 2 payments. And there are 2 main reasons for that. One is sort of the time value of money, and I want to get as much money onto the street for our people as possible, as opposed to repaying the federal government. Actually, there's 3 reasons. The second is because, as Jason had pointed out to me, we don't even traditionally pay this. This is usually paid by the state, and there's a chance that they might do so. And then third, again, I think those 2 payments, payment 2 and payment 3, they're not ephemeral the way, like the HEROES Act hasn't passed yet. We know we will get that money if we spend this money. And I think it still leaves us a large enough contingency. So I think we should do that. We should take it, split it, either put it all into one of the other 2 payments or split it between, and then we have $8.5 million more to use in this package.
Thoughts or comments related to that proposal? So I see a thumbs up and then another thumbs up. Other assembly members have comments or questions related to that proposal?
I want to speak to it briefly as probably the chief proponent of the contingency fund. I think it's reasonable. It's actually savvy and fun. So I would offer folks a request to support it.
Okay, thank you. Felix?
Yeah, I'm supportive of it. I'm just curious when they get the administration's perspective on sort of outside of current to date. Is there sort of a projection of how much more of that 25% match that you're going to need?
I would certainly expect that over the remainder of the year, that number ultimately probably gets closer to the $10 to $12 million range based on kind of the projections and how we're spending on some of the direct responses now. But Alex, does that number seem accurate to you? Yeah. So, and that's fine with us to spread it among the second and third payment, or it could be most of the third payment. That's fine as well.
Okay, so Molly's quickly making that adjustment for us. And Crystal, I saw that you had your hand up. Go for it.
Actually, Felix asked my question, so I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Any other assembly member comments or questions? Others? Okay, nope, I think we're ready to move on. Meg?
Actually, can I just ask something quickly about that? Jason, how is this process going to go? We're going to make suggestions, then you're going to keep a list, and then you're going to go back and check and work through. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And the good news is we're catching that all live now for your purposes. So assembly members here in person and online can see all this happening live. Okay, Meg, go for it.
Thank you. It has been raised about the applicability and accessibility of the jobs programs, and I had forgotten to put forward something, so I have forwarded it to Chris, Judy, and Jason. But for members, it's a $300,000 ask to scale programs at 9-Star Employment. I'll have Jennifer share the memo. We have a 3-page, very detailed memo from their CEO that I think would go a long way towards kind of some of the balance of equities that I know myself and Mr. Rivera are concerned with. So I just wanted to put that out there since it didn't come up in the previous conversation.
Definitely, I want to press pause on that. So is that, Meg, did you see that as a component of one of the jobs, of one of the proposals here that came from the administration, or as a separate line item? So an additional $300,000 that's specifically targeted as you've described?
It would be a separate program, but it would be necessary for me to feel like the others were being more holistic and kind of getting at the full spectrum of folks who are facing unemployment.
Okay. So Molly, we are adding a line in there? Yep. And that is a direct proposal. So what I forgot, I really failed to mention that we did pass out for everybody's benefit the handouts and the items that were emailed to the assembly. There are 3 of them. The revised framework, you can put that aside if you wish, but you do have the full list of projects that Jason brought forward with the potential priority area, and then the full suite of projects that you all shared on July 17th. So this, I realize they're all a little bit tiny print, but they're fully available to you should you need them. 300,000. Okay, thank you. Yes, John?
I just say, Jeff, my wife works at 9-Star, so somebody might want to highlight that.
Thank you. Okay. Other discussions that you had and negotiations or questions that you have for the administration? So ready for additional ideas and thoughts? Yep, C. Forrest and then Chris.
I don't know if this is the level of specificity we're talking about, but because it's a relatively large ask, I want to start it now. And this is something that myself, Ms. Quinn Davidson, and Ms. Zolotel have been talking about, and that's the mental health first responders and the startup costs there. And so for the administration, my first feeling was that it should come out of the. It could be included in the public, in the first responder payroll reserve, and I'm wondering if there's any amount of that you could see being dedicated to that, perhaps 7 million or 5 million, or what number, Jason?
I think you just need to remember what that first responders payroll reserve, what we're really doing. We are paying. So if you're asking for us to dedicate money specifically to mental health, first responders, then that's a different thing altogether.
Well, let me ask Jason then, if we were to reduce that by a certain amount and have a different program come out of it, what's the number that the administration could live with?
I think if that's where it is wanting to come from, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 million would be doable. But again, I would just point out that there's still, I think, a lot of work that needs to be in there and to really refine that number. But I think that's a potential starting point.
Okay.
But Molly, I would actually do that a little differently. So I would put in, hey folks on the phone, we can hear some munchkins in the background. If you could please mute your phone, that would be appreciated. So I think I would create a different line. So what I hear is that there's a proposal for reducing the first responder payroll reserve to 21 million, and then mental health first responders, a proposal of 4 million. Am I understanding that correctly, everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then 20 we're going to work magic with this spreadsheet. Create money that doesn't exist. Okay. So I have got the queue here. I had Forrest. Are you done, Forrest? You're good?
I have other stuff, but let's cycle through other people.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, Chris, Suzanne, and then Felix.
Thank you. If you scroll down to about 35 maybe, there are 34 cultural pillars. I strongly want to add the zoo and probably the cultural center there. Not the cultural center, the conservation center. These are different than general nonprofits. I would add $500,000 and I would move it from the nonprofit stimulus. These organizations, or excuse me, from the tourism stimulus, we were told it was part of that small business stabilization, tourism, and hospitality, but these are different. These are entities that are strongly supportive of Alaska and Anchorage citizens, and they have lives at stake. These are animals, but they're animals that we have as a community stewarded for a long time. So I would ask the support to do that.
Okay, so I think we're trying to stay in tune with you as much as possible, but what was the dollar amount again, Chris?
I would do 500,000 from the, added there, and then from the, that one, yeah.
To remove it here?
Yeah.
I thought it was not the nonprofit
The
stimulus.
tourism and hospitality.
Yeah, so it's not that line, Molly, it's
I'll
the,
just
yeah,
I'll just say, Chris, for my part, I prefer it coming out of that line 32 rather than line 30. But
out of the nonprofit.
Well, it's, either one works for me. They are both nonprofits, and it's not the cultural center, it's the conservation center. But my mouth isn't working so well right now.
Yeah, Wildlife Conservation Center?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it just, we have a duty to make sure that those, they're similar to me, to the zoo, the Heritage Center. They're just different.
Okay. Can we get any responses to that proposal? Okay.
So this is Chris. I've got my hand up for a question.
Okay. Yeah. So we're kind of tracking. So what I see first is that just a quick explanation again. Chris was suggesting adding the zoo and the Wildlife Conservation Center to that cultural pillar stabilization list, upping that amount by $500,000. And taking those funds so that would decrease the amount in line 32 for nonprofit stimulus.
And then, so just a quick sort of process thing. It might be helpful if you keep sort of two different queues. One just for the general, whenever we're going to talk about a new proposal. And then second for when we talk about specific proposals, because I know there are probably like 3 or 4 of us that have questions about this specific one.
Say it again for me, please, because I just heard another voice.
Crystal.
Crystal, I thought Chris was suggesting that it come out of the small business stimulation, that stabilization for the tourism and hospitality component.
I think there was a clarification, a little bit of negotiation that happened live here. So Chris said, Forrest said, actually, I thought we should take that from the nonprofit stimulus line. That would be my recommendation. And Chris said, I'm good either way. I think this may be a quote. So that's a quote. So I took the compromise, and right now what we have on deck here is nonprofit stimulus decreased, adding that funds to cultural pillar stabilization. Yep. and that bumped up our cultural pillar stabilization by $500,000. So I do have the general queue to Felix's point. I have the longer queue, but are there other questions related to this proposal? So I got the okay, hands.
Yes.
John, then Felix, then Austin.
All right, thanks. Chris, appreciate your listing those two, the zoo and the Wildlife Conservation Center. But, what I kind of see is a little special about this particular list of places, which then maybe we added on to, is how would you provide the subsidy to them? And to me, these things are all, they get, a lot of donations and so on, but their income is driven to some extent, particularly with less tourists, by ticket sales, and their ticket sales have tanked. And I would say, okay, these are grouped here because we will subsidize them differently. Some places you might do, we're just going to give you $10,000, do what you got to do. And with something like this that's ticket driven, I would almost say we subsidize their ticket. So for every ticket you sell, we will give you X dollars. And to me, that keeps the natural order of things where they kind of help you create demand for the businesses and so on, and we just help them out. So that's the way they would get their subsidy. So and that's kind of the administration. I don't know if you had thought out how would you do these subsidies. But in my head, that bucket would be defined by how they would get their subsidy, almost more than tourism or whatever they are.
But John, you're not suggesting different dollar amounts at this point. You're just about the process for administering the. Yeah.
None of us have a clue what they need or would want. And is that number good? As good as any at this point. So.
Okay. Thank you, Felix.
Yeah, thanks. So on this specific point, wanted to sort of get clarification from the administration. I think Chris Schutte was about to jump in. So these, in the parenthetical, this list, is that like a specific defined list? It is only these things and nothing else? And then I have a follow-up to that.
Thank you through the chair, I guess. It's not designed to be limited to just those three, but those three are the most dominant cultural pillars out there. We did not include some of the facilities like zoo and wildlife conservation center. I think mostly for the reasons that Assemblymember Wells highlighted, which is we haven't seen a request from them or seen any sort of financial impact from them, so that we would be able to judge how to fold them into this. But I think as a placeholder, this is fine, so that we can complete that investigation and understand their needs.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing you say is, yes, if we wanted to include the zoo and the Wildlife Conservation Center, that we would need to increase the dollar amount?
Through the chair, no, I once we understand what the specific needs are for those facilities, I would expect that to increase the total amount on line 34.
Thanks.
Okay. Which we've already done one increment of that. Okay. Austin, related to this proposal.
Since Schutte didn't bring it up, or Weddleton, it's probably fine, but I just want to make sure the Wildlife Conservation Center is in Anchorage. Okay. Thanks.
It is.
Thank you. Chris.
Idea of taking on a tour of our district.
I've been to the Conservation Center many times. Didn't know I was in Anchorage.
Yeah, that turn is when you get up to the mountains and start to go up, is where you enter the canyon. But so the framing of the ticket sales is a really important concept, whether it's a discount on tickets or just a bulk purchase of access or any number of things, because Ms. Kennedy's point earlier today was, let's find a way to have multiple benefits. And the benefit there is that the public can then have access to this place that they may not otherwise be able to afford. And so all of those institutions do fit in that category, and I appreciate that framing. However, it gets implemented in the end.
Okay. So just to clarify, we're still in the queue for questions related to this proposal or comments. And so next up, I have Crystal. You might be muted, Crystal.
Yeah. I don't know about this.
Okay. Related to this proposal, was that you, Forrest? No?
I'm in the main queue.
Okay, you're on the main queue. I've already got you in the main queue. Great. Suzanne, related to this proposal?
Thank you. Just a quick comment, actually. John and I were talking at the break about incentives, as he mentioned, and demand. And so it may be possible to coordinate like with ASD on some of this stuff, since there's an educational component as well. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions related to this proposal? Okay, that takes us back to the big queue, and Forrest, you're up.
I don't think I am.
Yeah, I've got you next on the list, and then Chris, Suzanne, Felix, and Austin, if you guys can remember what you...
That's fine, why don't you put me back, why don't you put me at the bottom of that queue?
Okay. Chris?
I already went.
Okay. Suzanne?
Thanks. We haven't really talked in this session about domestic violence and any heightened community demand or need for services. I know some of the aspects of these services could be addressed in housing and homelessness, but I think it's maybe a bigger piece. And so I know that, and Mr. Bockenstead is working on this piece with me as well, that Awake does have some outstanding needs, and especially during this time when they've had to social distance and have reduced capacity. So I would like to put them on the list. It's preliminary, and I don't have a firm figure, but I would put them down for like 500,000. I know that for they're working in other ways on their capital project. I think they have about 600,000 or so more they need to raise. And I, again, don't have the details on if they would be eligible for other existing relief at this time, but I think it's an important placeholder to have on here. And can I add a couple more things because I may need to run?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. The other item, Public Lands Jobs Program. John and I were also talking at the break, and there are a couple potential projects in our district related to jobs and safety and health. One is a small one, actually, that would increase parking capacity at Glen Elks by maybe 10 to 20 spots, and that costs $50,000. There's another bigger project that's just in it's in preliminary discussion, and that would be excuse me, upgrading the Rabbit Lake trailhead, and we've just started to engage the neighbors and CSP and DNR, and so there are more details to come on that. But if we could put a placeholder, I don't know, it'd be somewhere between 150 and $1 million for consideration, that since we're just looking at potential amendments. And then I just would add that I would really like to include the recommendation from the ERTF on vouchers for basic needs. I understand it's complicated to do, but this is an area where I have received feedback from residents about this concern, whether it's like for groceries or gas money, prescriptions. And almost it feels like, too, we're being very careful and deliberate about trying to identify all the areas of needs, but it seems like there needs to be some allocation or recognition for just needs-based support that we haven't thought of, that impacts households or just folks on a day-to-day basis. I'll stop there. I have a few others, but thank you.
Okay, so I think there's a couple of questions related to what you just suggested. So I'm going to start with the Awake Domestic Violence Prevention. Anyone have any questions or comments related to that?
I guess I would just ask, I mean, I know we're very ballpark, but 500,000 seems like a lot to me. So I guess I need a little more clarity as to why that number, and I know it's very preliminary, but certainly before August 11th.
It's a complete ballpark, and it's not really based on anything. It's not so much, well, I guess it is prevention, but also, emergency housing and intervention. I really, Forrest, Mr. Dunbar, don't have any idea, but just some concerns about it being an area left off for consideration.
Have they reached out to you at all? Have they sent any letters or emails or anything like that that we could base stuff off of?
We've had some initial conversations,
Okay.
but the need hasn't been quantified yet. But definitely they have reduced capacity. They've run out of funding for the additional housing that they've had. But I don't have a quantification of the need or if, there's support available through these other buckets of money. That very well may be the case, but if it's not, it would be really bad if we didn't have it on the list for something.
Sure, thank you, thanks.
Felix, a comment related to this proposal?
Yeah, I think Forrest pretty much covered it. I was just wondering if there was like a specific proposal that's leading to this dollar amount. But you already covered it. Also, just wanted to state that just like with all our other committees and like we did rules committees and like we did on the 17th, it's okay to use first names, guys.
Good. Thanks, Felix. Okay. Then I think there were some questions. If we go down to the next one that Suzanne had was the Glen Alps parking expansion around the Lake Trailhead. So we've got those in one line. Were there questions or comments? John?
That should actually be 200,000. The Glen Alps was 50,000 ashore on the shoulders that are getting ruined by the huge number of people there. And then the 150 was for the rapid lake.
Okay.
And the people who are up there, they've been over capacity for many years, but the use out there is just, it's exciting to see how many people are out there any day. It is absolutely incredible. So we really do need to do that. And Rapid Lake Trailhead has been contemplated for many, many, many years. So it's not, while that doesn't have this kind of design done, it's something that the thinking and the penciling it through is actually fairly far along.
Okay. Thanks, John. Glen Alps 50, Rabbit Lake 150. Okay. Yeah, I would put those in parentheses for us, Molly. And then Austin, go for a question related to that proposal.
Yeah, I was just going to ask to John and Suzanne. So are you talking about, I hike there all the time. So you're talking about along the road where people are parking on the side and actually creating a parking lot, or just making that road in better shape? And then I was going to ask Suzanne, back to the domestic violence, could you get Awake to provide a proposal for us? Yes.
I think on the parking at Glen Alps, it's actually not the road leading up to there. It's between the two parking lots. People are parking on the shoulder.
Sorry, Rabbit Lake, I meant.
But at Rapid Lake, it would be more extensive. And right now, there isn't really parking. It's just a wider dirt road. And it would be to make it true functioning parking. And I'm not even certain that the official capacity would go up dramatically, but you'd have real parking.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Austin. Chris, is this related to this proposal? Okay, please.
So I don't have the numbers in front of me. I have an email I'll find, but also in this one, and this was the reason that I came up with the original framing of the jobs program, was to reconstruct the access to Flat Top. It's literally falling off the mountain right now, and to me that's a very important piece of this, and it's at Glen Alps, and so this is probably a natural place to fit it. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'd like to add Flat Top trail repair, and I'll come up with that number heretofore.
Thank you. Anyone else questions regarding this suite of recreational opportunities for us?
Is there some, given that how you just described, this was always intended to be part of the broader work program, does it really need to be broken out like that, or at some point we want to merge it into one? Jason's nodding yes. Okay.
Yeah, because it's sort of like the employment piece of it, and then it's the capital construction piece of it, right, Jason?
I think that's certainly part of it, but I think I understand why we're writing it down like this. It's easier for discussion purposes and everything, but certainly for the administrative side of these, all of these different ideas, making sure that they are combined with kind of either an existing program or something that is being proposed is certainly going to make it easier on the administration to be able to both work on these, push it out, and account for everything on the back end instead of having individual kind of agreements or projects for each of these.
So can I ask a question to that end to the assembly? Does this mean the $1.5 million, could that potentially include the $200,000 for these projects, or do we need to bump up that public lands jobs program, or what are you saying? Bump it up?
I think where I am coming from is the public lands jobs program would just be bumped up by the amount of the additional project work that we want to do.
Okay, let's do that now then. So let's go up to 1.7 and then fold in that language, Molly. If you could just copy paste it and shove it in that description for the public lands, so it's at least we're documenting that discussion.
Could we round up to 2 million?
Thank you.
Okay, I heard 2 million going once. Okay, 2 million. I hear a no. Yeah.
Let's not do that just yet.
Okay, so let's stay at 1.7 and see what comes forth in our other proposals.
Well, Chris, do you have any ballpark on what it will cost to repair those stairs?
Yeah, if I might, it's just one more second. I believe it's not just the stairs, it's the whole access, and I think that the number they gave, and this was just their round number, was 750. But we can do any part of that to motivate it. And as Mr. Dunbar shakes his head, I think there's one piece that's missing from this conversation. Almost all of these work programs so far only go to one area in town, and that's south and the hillside and towards Girdwood. And so there's an equity concern that's raised by all of these, and so we have to do our part to ensure that we also drive benefits and opportunities to people who are have less opportunity.
Yeah. So as you get into the details of the proposal, it sounds like there's an opportunity to come back to those guiding principles to ensure that equity is happening. Okay, so Felix, did you have a comment?
Yeah, if we can just make sure that on the description, that the additions are in red, just so we can keep distinction.
Thank you. Okay, John, still on the same topic?
Yeah, I think that's Chris's comment. The last couple of times I've been up to Flat Top, people of color were absolutely predominant. It was amazing. It was super diverse. South side, not quite as much, but that north side, everyone in Anchorage goes there.
I absolutely agree, and in fact, it's a spot where people are taken up there from all over town when they come if you want to see a real piece of rural Alaska in the middle of an urban community. And so that to me is why that one of all the other projects is more valuable than most of the other trail projects that we have discussed, because it has a nexus to tons of communities.
Okay, thank you. And Crystal, do you have a comment or question related to this proposal?
Yes, I think I do. I just wanted to check on the list. We've got obviously Girdwood and Eagle River there in parentheses, but specifically one of the projects that I know we have out in Eagle River is potentially the Aquina Lake Trail. There are erosion places going on around that trail that's getting pretty bad. So if that's one that we can add on there, unless it was put in listed somewhere else, that's it.
Yeah, through the chair, we need to provide a little explanation here. We don't list out the individual projects on line 26, and so you're actually duplicating some of the projects that are currently included.
Okay, thank you. That helps, and that would answer my question.
Yeah, and so I think to see it, no, thanks, Crystal, and I think everyone's coming to that place. So it sounds like we just need the full description of what that would potentially include. Okay, okay to move on to, I think, was that all of yours that you had, no, in the last one that Suzanne had recommended or proposed, but we don't have a dollar amount listed there, at least currently, is the ERTF recommendations for vouchers for priority needs. Was there a dollar amount related to that?
I don't know the dollar amount, but I didn't see the ERTF's recommendation. I don't know if they specified any amount.
Chris?
Yeah, so through the chair, this is part of the challenge with that one, Assembly Member LaFrance, and that's why I think we probably can't do it on the floor today, but we do want to leave it in as a placeholder so we can investigate how to actually capitalize this idea.
Quick point on it.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Thanks. We can't do anything on the floor today except for put together a draft concept, so that's the baseline for all this. We can't vote until daylight.
I don't think anyone's trying to vote, but thank you. Yeah, for the reminder. Yeah. Okay. If no other
I want to
questions,
speak to that one, please.
yeah, Meg.
Thank you. I want to know how that's different from an individual stimulus that we've already proposed, because, I think we run into the same issues of administration, finding that sweet spot in terms of the right number of people to reach in the amount. Austin and I come up with 14.5 million, and that was just, to get at least what we thought would be a reasonable amount of money out to a reasonable number of people tied to another means-tested benefit. I'm really interested in that idea, especially if the federal unemployment isn't extended or nothing more comes. So to the extent that I can telegraph to the administration, and I'm willing to help, that we can work out some details in case we need it. I think this one's a priority, and it's one that's probably going to run over $10 million. So I think it's worth flagging that it's, in order to make an impact, it's going to have to be some serious money. Not that everything else isn't serious money.
Yeah, I would just put that comment, Molly, just next comment related to, some kind of approximation of $10 million and question related to how is it different from the individual stimulus checks, and then go for it, Austin.
I was just going to give some backup to what Meg said, and she actually did this calculation, but I have it in front of me so I can read it off, that we have a 9.2% poverty rate, and that's about 29,000 people. So that calculation is based on that if we give each of those folks, including kids, $500 for kids, that would be $14.5 million. So that's where that number came from.
Okay, thank you. And Forrest, question related to this proposal?
Yes, although it gets to what I was going to talk about at the end when I come back up in the queue. I don't know if I'm next or not, but so I think there are administrative issues with this one, being able to get it out quickly. And I think those administrative issues are not shared by rental assistance. And I've had this conversation with the sponsors before too. I was going to propose $20 million for rental assistance. And right now we have about 20.5 million, actually about 19 million that's free. I would prefer the ERTF voucher program that goes forward to have something like $1 million as a pilot, and then more money from a later pot, because we don't know how this is going to work or what it's going to look like, versus rental assistance, which we've already done twice, and we do know how to get it out quickly, and I think it serves a similar community. So I was going to propose $1 million on this line as a pilot, and then if it works well, then ramp it up in future payments.
Okay, so let's just get that on there. So $1 million in the actual, yep. And then what I'm hearing you say at the same time, though, and Forrest, since you had the microphone, is this additional line that's not, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not articulated on here currently, which is an additional sum for rental assistance?
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my main ask once we come back around. So I'll bring it to you guys now, but we can come back to it.
Yeah, let's put it in there now, since we're talking about it and it has some connection to existing programming. And Felix, question related to these proposals.
Thanks, not a question, just a comment.
Yes.
So I am texting and working right now with the committee that brought that proposal forward, and so what they were thinking in terms of the voucher program was $200 per family per week, plus an additional $25 per child. So that $1 million could potentially help a lot of families if we use that kind of framework.
Per week, though? Is that an agreement rate?
Yeah, per week.
Okay, thank you. So any questions or comments related to kind of a modified ERTF idea with a dollar amount related to it, and then the proposal regarding mortgage and rental assistance? Yeah, Meg?
I'm okay with piloting it. Some quick math told me I still prefer the lump sum idea. And then I took $1 million and then just divided it by $500, which was 2,000 families. I think that's a good way to pilot it. It's obviously well below. If we were to do that, at the $200 range per family, and then per child, that just, what the ERTF has suggested seems really complicated, and it seems like a lot of administrative issues, whereas if it was like, this is the one time you get to do it and we can attach it to something else you're already eligible for, that's why we had targeted folks below poverty rate or at poverty rate, so that you could attach it to some other place where a list of people live for purposes of quick administration and notice to folks to apply.
Okay. Forrest and then Austin, are you still related to ERTF?
Yeah, and more my own mortgage rental assistance, I was gonna help pay for it. Maybe Austin, do you have something before I go?
Yeah, just to say that I agree with Forrest and Meg. I think that an easier program to administer is basically stimulus check. And I think it's fine doing a pilot program and not doing a big chunk. I guess my concern is, how do you pick the folks who get the money in the pilot program? And yeah, using the number, I think we need to have better numbers to know that we're not cutting it off in a natural place. I mean, maybe it's 2 million, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 1, I don't know.
Okay. Thank you. And so, Forrest, I think that takes us back to comments or questions related to mortgage and rental assistance.
So if we have the $8.5 million from the FEMA match, and we had $12 million already, that gets us to $20.5 million that was quote unquote free before we started this conversation. Since then, we've added $1 million for the ERTF pilot program, $500,000 for Awake, $200,000 for Rapid Lake, Glenalps, and potentially the stairs at Flat Top. Thank you. So let's see, that's 1.7 million. So that takes you down to, oh man, I was promised to be no math.
The math is up here for you. We've cheated and done it for you.
Okay,
Mostly because Jason had this set up already, so this gives you where you're at right now.
So I had it at 18.8 million that was currently free. I think you have it a little different. I have about 18.8 million that is currently free. And so it's, I want to get another $1 million approximately. And so to do that, I propose reducing the nonprofit stimulus by an additional $500,000, and probably the arts and cultural stabilization by another $500,000. I think a lot of those things are serving the same community, and I just think there are some equity concerns too, but I would prefer to take that money and put it into rental assistance.
Okay. Meg?
So your total on rental assistance was
20 million.
What if we agreed to push it through some of that from the next tranche of money coming instead of all from this one? Because we won't be able to get $20 million out the door before we'll be eligible for the next set of money, and that it will come in. And there's definitely room in that, even if that FEMA piece is brought forward. I think this also gets to the idea of the contingency fund was we don't know what's coming, and this would be a part of that. So I think instead of maybe trying to whittle away at some of these to do that there might be that makeup amount or an amount in that next set of funding.
Can I speak to that a little bit?
Yes, because what might be a proposal related to that?
I think that is, I'm open to that, and obviously I'm just one person. You guys cannot go anywhere near that large an amount. I think the rental assistance program is going to see itself subject to a ton of need in the next month for a variety of reasons that the chair has laid out in different ordinances and resolutions. I also would like to see, the public is going to see these sort of line items laid out. And I think rental assistance is one of those clear ones that people understand what it does, and I would like it to be the largest single item. That's sort of my goal. And again, you guys can overrule me, but I would like it, for example, to be larger than that 12.5 number. I want it to be somewhere north of that.
Okay. Felix, and then Chris related to this proposal.
Thanks. Yeah, somehow we went from ERTF to rental, and I was actually in the general queue to talk about rental, because I think that's a big one that we should probably get at first. So, sorry, can we go to the dollar amount for the rental?
Yep, 20 million right now.
Great. So, I would like us to think about the rental assistance, landlord assistance, mortgage assistance in a few different types of buckets of support. So first we have the tenant support, which is sort of the direct rent assistance, which goes to landlords anyway. Then we have sort of the navigational support, and making sure that we are, folks who need the help can get it in the most streamlined way possible. Next, we have sort of the legal services, which I don't have a direct dollar amount for that. But I guess as I'm listing off all of these things, what I'd like to think about this is sort of one pot of money where all of these things can be incorporated, because some of the work we're going to do is going to actually lower the amount of direct rental assistance that's needed if we can handle it in some other types of ways. So I have this email basically sort of laying out, here's all the things that you can do from the tenant side, from the landlord side, from the court side, and from a policy side that can really assist in reducing evictions and helping folks stay in their homes. So if we can think about it in that much more of a broader context versus just direct rental assistance, I think we can get a lot accomplished with $20 million. And I think, $20 million roughly sounds appropriate for all of these different moving pieces that go into building that program that was laid out in the resolution that we approved on Tuesday.
Thank you, Felix. And you're right, you are next in the queue for big proposals. And the timing just worked for Force to step forward related to the ERTF. So let's continue this dialogue. So what we hear is Felix is supporting, given that description of a more robust suite and continuum of services, an opportunity to stay with the $20 million in this initial allocation. And Meg was suggesting that there might be some kind of delay. I'd like to hear from other folks that have comments or questions related to this proposal. Chris, and then Austin and Suzanne.
Thank you. My only concern is on the funding source. I believe that the nonprofit source has been whittled down pretty hard. And the part that I'm still not clear on the value of it, I'm probably going to catch some help for this, but is the Visit Anchorage piece. I still am not understanding, I guess, what that piece is. But if I had to choose whether we're going to support our local nonprofits to keep their doors open or spend money on international marketing campaigns, I think I know where I want to spend that money. It's on our local neighborhoods and communities. And so I think that if we're going to be whittling any more to those nonprofits, we should be looking at places where we're sending money out of state first.
Thank you. Austin?
I guess I just want to say that 20 million seems like a lot to add to this and won't leave room for other things. So I'm just a little worried about that, but I think we can maybe reduce it and add more later. I agree, it's one of the most important elements overall.
Thank you. Suzanne? I've got your name on here there.
Thanks. I was thinking about the point that Meg made about including it in subsequent funding allocations, and Forrest's point about showing that we're intending to spend a substantial amount on this. And so I guess I just assumed, I forgot we were just looking at the 116 million. I thought in my mind we were just, conceptualizing the entire 156 million. So it seems like if we could just show the total in one place, and we don't really know yet, how the demand will go or how it will be all in the second or the third payment. So I guess I'm saying I'm agreeing if we can just show the total amount in some way that's clear to the public, while also maintaining that we understand we're going to get funding for that in the next allocation.
Thank you. Meg?
Thank you. I want to express support for navigation support and legal services. I have a firm proposal from Cook Inlet Housing on scaling a navigation program between them and NeighborWorks, and I can dig it up and we can start to talk about what that looks like and how much that portion of it costs. I think it's sure. Navigation would be landlords and tenants. It's a unique relationship. And so if you're having trouble with your rent, you might call the navigator to find out what resources are available. to you, beyond just maybe calling 211. You may not know about 211. You will also then have landlords who are having issues with their tenants not being able to pay could call as well and say, have you guys talked about this program being available or that? Were you aware of the rent deferment form? Some of those things. And so they're really just doing this dance to try to preserve that relationship so that folks can keep their rentals. That's one of the hardest things for landlords and tenants to really preserve when it gets stressful. And so a lot of leases let folks just walk away with 30 days no matter what. And this would try to keep that impetus kind of pushed back, you know, like, oh, we've got someone to help us navigate. And then the legal services, I have the FED numbers, but that was through May. I mean, they're still in the hundreds in May, so legal services said they could certainly hire an attorney or two if that was needed. I mean, so that's looking at probably like $125,000 to $200,000 to have some attorneys who could do that work if, in fact, we don't get any kind of support there. So I think it encompasses that. Mm-hmm. All that said, I hear, Austin, that $20 million is a lot, and it really limits our ability. I would love to see initially out of this pot of money, you know, and then do some splits, is add $7 million right now, which would bring the total rental assistance up to $10 million, and then kind of know we're going to do more. I think it will handle any potential eviction tsunami, and I would love to know, and I can't find the number. I know it's out there. Like the total rents per month in Anchorage, like there's a number out there. I just can't seem to track it down of how much is like just out there in terms of rent that's paid per month in Anchorage. So I'll keep digging to see if I can find it. Because I think that would be really informative to know. And I know the use rate that of what we've already had is a little bit slower, but I think it will pick up. So I'm just trying to balance those two things. So, and it wouldn't mean that we would necessarily, I guess, Jason, what's the timing on the second payment? Like, let's say we've encumbered our 80%, or Alex, like how soon until the next one? I guess, because we start to think about that, how quick will that money come through?
It would, my sense is it would be relatively quickly. It's not like it would take very long.
So the state's got it, it's just when they release it?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so still on questions related to this proposal, I've got Crystal, Felix, and then I just saw Chris's hand and John's hand. So Crystal.
Well, related to this proposal, I certainly want to see a lot of funding going into the rental assistance. I think the fact that we have a new hunker down order, so to speak, coming online on Monday, closing indoor bars and restaurants, we're going to see more of those employees now, you know, that maybe got back online a month or two ago, probably going to not be working here, so I suspect the numbers that are already accessing those funds are going to increase, so we have to make sure that we kind of keep up with the trends, and so that's going to be an important one. So I don't necessarily mind seeing the payments being broken up like that, but I kind of agree that $20 million is probably not really out of line. So I definitely want to see that, and just kind of as an aside, I didn't really get to chime in time on the nonprofit numbers going down. There's a lot of nonprofits out there, and they're not looking for just dollars. They're looking for $100,000, $200,000, and I'll give you an example. That Wasilla gave their chamber $300,000. So there are definitely some needs out there that we need to watch out for those nonprofits. So anyway, I guess just kind of a couple of comments there in general. But again, I think we need to be really careful about not knocking down that rental assistance number, especially now when I think unemployment's going to even creep up a little bit more right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal. Felix? I'm sorry, what was that, Crystal?
The other thing I don't think we've really addressed in this, and I would like some more conversation, so maybe put it aside till we actually get off this particular topic, but
payroll reserve. Right now it's at 21 million. Administration, how low can that number go?
It can go no lower, and it's likely going to need to go higher.
Okay, not like that's where I wanted. Okay, then next is, so just from Nicole Nelson, who's the executive director at Alaska Legal Services, just to get a sense of sort of the rental insecurity in the community, and you can sort of transpose that. If folks are rent insecure, they're likely insecure in other aspects of their life, including food and gas. So there are 28,000 people who are rent insecure in Alaska right now, according to Alaska Legal Services and Bill Comp AEDC. And about 40% of that is in Anchorage. So if you do that number, that's 11,200 residents. So that's just to give a little bit of a context, both for this discussion and the other discussion in terms of the vouchers. You know, if you look at that, $1 million is not even going to hit a little bit of that, half of that need, I would imagine, for the 11,200 residents in Anchorage. And then just wanted to support the idea of going into different installments. I think that makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Felix. Next up, I have Chris.
Thank you. 2 points really. First question, can we appropriate all 20 or whatever the number ends up being across the 3 payments? 1, with funds we have, and 2, upon tendering, that if we find we don't need, we can reappropriate.
From the 21 million, you mean?
Across the 3 periods.
I think through the chair, you've already appropriated all 156 million.
Okay, so
we're just trying to figure out how to spend it.
So we could say, from the cash not in hand, we do direct these funds to these programs.
Yes.
Okay, so then it's not a question of on that line of rental assistance of we'll come back later and do it. We can do this all on the 11th for that rental category, mortgage assistance. And what that will do for us is provide those that need the comfort that they want to see that we're really putting a big investment in that category, that it exists and it is real. It's not just something that may come later. We could come back and redirect those funds, though, I would assume.
If it doesn't get spent.
Right, of course. Yeah, I mean, if you haven't. And so that's an important factor to keep in mind, that if it does get spread across those categories, that there are ways we can address concerns. And then there was an email sent to us today, and some of the facts, and it is not verified information, and it's not from such a credible source as Bill Puck. And I know some facts are wrong on this table, saying that our typical vacancy rate is 2%. We've been at closer to 7-8% for quite a while. But it does suggest that there's about 10,000 landlords, 45,000 rentals, and a lot of tenants, 20,000 or so. And so that gives us some rough numbers to play with, conceptualizing what the number of people are. And if you take a percentage of those, that helps us move closer. And that's in your email. Again, it's from the individual that was called into the meeting the other night. And take it for what it's worth. It's certainly worth looking at.
Thanks, Chris. John, you're up, and then Forrest.
I was actually going to bring that up, but the bottom line is that is by these estimates, the 20 million would be about 4 months of rent coverage. For, if, you know, to the extent this is accurate for everybody who would be missing payment rent. So it's an order of magnitude.
Forrest?
Thank you. I think that those statistics are very much in flux right now. And so I was thinking about this. I was going to counter with 15 million as my proposal instead of 20, go up through 7. I don't think the public recognizes that we already spent $3 million. I think that's, whatever we spent before, the public sort of doesn't even recognize that happened. So unfortunately.
Yeah,
so
that's
right
in
now,
the marketing that happens after this. I mean, I think it has to be part of what
we're thinking about what's going forward and what on the 11th our overall package will look like. If it can be structured in such a way on the 11th where we say we are dedicating $20 million, like the ordinance says or the resolution says, we are dedicating $20 million to rental assistance, but, you know, parentheses, it's coming from these 3 sources, then I'm fine with that. But if we don't think we can all put it in one resolution that does that, then I would suggest moving this to 15 million, spreading the other 5 million over the next 2. And just from my other conversations, I think there are about, I don't know, in my head, I think there's about $7 million of other proposals that haven't been put on the table yet. And I think we can get there, even with the $15 million number, by making a couple of other cuts, like Chris proposed, Visit Anchorage, or a few others. But I guess, so I would argue for 15 million unless we're sure that we can do what Chris described on the 11th. Jason, can you speak to that?
I think procedurally, yes, you can do that. I will say, I think from the administration's perspective, we're going to have to discuss internally about some of these numbers, because I don't think we're supportive of the numbers that we are putting towards some of these at this time. And I get what you're saying, that we've, no one understands that we haven't put anything towards rental assistance right now, but we still have $2 million that we haven't even pushed out.
Yeah.
The program has been live for 6 weeks now, and we haven't even pushed out more than a third of what we've already appropriated. And I have a hard time believing that if we actually say we're appropriating $20 million on August 11th, that at some point in the future, either the Assembly or the administration is going to be able to say, oh, well, we don't need that, let's pull it back. I think the question is going to then become, why aren't you just paying more, or allowing more people to get more months of rental assistance versus what they are right now. So,
okay, well then can I propose that we take that 7 million to 15 million, that frees up $5 million, and then have other people put stuff on the table, and then come back and we'll fight about it some more, cut it more.
Okay, so that's a proposal that's on the table, but Jamie's been patient in the queue. Jamie, you've got the floor.
Thank you. So I did send out the statistics in regards to the fair housing, and I'm kind of missed because if I looked at all the other proposals, I'm pretty sure I was the only one, maybe I'm wrong, and you guys correct me, that actually had numbers and amounts and dollar signs and percentages. So I'm not speaking just off the cuff when I sent that email out, and that came from the Alaska Fair Housing. The problem I'm running into is if there's $5 million that still hasn't been received from landlords from their tenants, and they're already going to be in the hole for April, May, and June of over $21 million, I would have to say the $15 million that Forrest just did, I would like to bump that up to $21 million. We have to look at the most significant persons that have been impacted. If you can't keep a roof over your head, or the banks are going to come in and you have to pay money back as best as you can, but we need to help these people now, and keeping a roof over their heads without that extra stress, especially with what the mayor just came out with. Small businesses are now brought back down. We're going to be losing money, and our small businesses are going to be affected. So now I'm going to go into small businesses. So can we compromise and bring that 15 million up?
Okay, that's a question to the group. Thanks, Jamie.
Okay, I'm not done.
Oh, go ahead.
So, okay, sorry. So then I'm asking the group right now, can we please bring that up? Because these people are being impacted. They're not being able to pay their mortgages. And if we want to help the renters, then we need to help the landlords as well. I don't understand that, because here, I'm going to lead into this then. We have 5.5 million going into a health clinic, which I thought was on the voters' ballot, that the voters voted down. And I'm trying to find if somebody, whether John or Suzanne, can please explain to me why we're putting $5.5 million into a clinic in Birdwood right now, today, or during this time. Where is that related to COVID? Can you explain that so I understand better? And then I have another one after that I'd like to address.
You've laid a few things on the table, so let's take them one at a time. So the first, which I hear, is this proposal that you've just asked the group, and I don't know if that was $21 million, then still additional payments in the second and the third payments?
I believe from the numbers I'm looking at, they're uncollected amounts for mortgage rent
to landlords is over $5 million. And I believe that's taken into consideration the amount that we've already received. So I would compromise and I would say at least 18 million because we did disperse 3 million already, but I'd like to bump it up to at least 18. My overall goal would be 26, but I think 18 million is more realistic to keep shelter for people so they don't have to be homeless.
Okay.
And then the other one would be the Girdwood Health Clinic.
Yeah, you don't have to repeat that again, Jamie. I heard you the first time, and so I think we're just getting clarification on the business or that mortgage and rental assistance piece. So I'd like to get other assembly members' input or feedback on what I hear is for us to come forward with a counter proposal of 15 million, and Jamie's just upped that by 3 million. So I see Austin, and then Meg, and then Chris.
I actually just wanted to ask a process question, which is that I don't want to get to the point where there are other proposals that haven't even been put forward, but we've already made decisions without considering those. So I actually think we should go through all the proposals sort of as Forrest suggested, instead of spending a bunch of time on one, and then look at the scale of everything we have and cut where we think is necessary.
Okay, thanks, Austin. Meg?
Same point.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, so Jason had been speaking before we went down all those rabbit holes about the possibility that this could be too much or we're just pushing the money out. But we actually have someone in the room who is responsible for overseeing the 211 program. And so I would like to ask Michelle briefly to speak to the functional capacity of their system. How, if we do this, do we just create a pressure wall that can't actually get through the system, or what's the feasibility?
May I go ahead? If we are going to push it out much further, we have the ability to add other providers and step up and meet the demand. I think that the question on need is going to turn on whether or not we need to stay with the provisions we have now, which is you can only get a maximum of 2 months rent at a maximum of $1,000 each month, and you have to have a COVID-related loss of income. And that's different than, vouchers or whatever that you give to everyone. So if this is just COVID-related income, that's one of the reasons it's a lesser demand. We do get a lot of calls from people who are still looking for rent assistance who do not have that pre-qualifying condition. So, and the other area that we would like to start exploring is actually getting with landlords and landlord associations and making sure that we coordinate with landlords that they work with their tenants to get their tenants in this queue for the money. So I think there are things we could do to drive up usage as well, if there are more funds available. Mr. Constant, does that answer your question?
I think yes. I mean, you have capacity. It just needs to be packaged in a way that meets the need.
Okay, thank you. And so I know that Crystal's still in the queue related to this proposal, and what I heard is the desire to move on, and we've got a rough number in that cell currently for consideration, but let's leave time for other proposals that we've not yet heard about. Crystal, question or comment related to the mortgage and rental assistance proposal?
I haven't said anything in this entire meeting, and I've been listening to everybody else come around, and to just be not taking into consideration the thoughts that I might have, unbelievable.
Jamie, I'm confused because your actual proposal is up on the screen right now. And so that's for consideration as we hear about other proposals. So you are being recognized, and that number is up there currently. I did hear your question related to the Girdwood Clinic, and we can come back to that after we've again had the opportunity to hear about some other proposals. So Crystal, I do believe I just asked Crystal because she was in the queue if she has any questions or comments.
Well, my comment is I agree with the 18,000. I think I put my little thumbs up signal up there as well. For the very reasons that I mentioned before. It's just that this is one of those things that I appreciate the conversation, so I'm not sure who was speaking before, but just the idea that in some cases, some of our people that really do need this assistance they just don't know how to navigate the system and ask the question. And I know I'm happy, to actually stay on this topic a little bit. I think there are 2 or 3 big ticket items, what I'm calling big ticket items. I think if we can get those nailed down, then we can figure out where some of the other smaller things can fit into this picture. So I don't have a problem with sticking on the topic of these bigger items. Thanks.
Thanks, Crystal. Anyone else, any comments or questions related to what is up on the screen right now as a potential number to start with for mortgage or rental assistance? Let's take a 15-minute break. So it is, on my watch, 2:25, so let's come back promptly at 2:40.
Can we get it down to 5 and 6?
Let's take a 5-minute break. Okay. Whatever you desire, my friends. 5 minutes.
Let's do this. We don't have friends other than each other.
Oh, yeah.
Finally, we contacted my son, Donna, and he's been okay. And then we were watching it from afar.
I'm not trying to be funny, but watching kids with mono is very easy.
She's watching from her house.
No, that's great.
Yeah, you just, you
Really
don't listen.
socially distanced. That's great.
I'm sorry, when you're done.
Sure.
I just don't know, I'm trying to figure out what's, coming.
Awesome. And I think there's like answer was like
Well, Christian is on side. And I think Liz Peace also, they'd love to speak to it. And there's general misconception too about the whole vote. People buy a digital piece outside or they have to pay. Oh, so cool. But Chris is on the line for that.
Okay. Oh, I think we have a few. Yeah, I think we do have a few. Yes.
In terms of timing?
I think so.
Is it what we
Yeah.
had slotted
Like
for
this is a
2:40?
good thing.
We're doing the thing.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just one.
No,
I thought you said you had one lined up.
well, so Rylan is trying to have a coach with me. So if you use that one, so it's like, it's like, either they'll take both rooms. So it's kind of just like, so Rylan's not like that, I kind of just feel like, you want to. But I was just like, I went on this whole like rant about like internalized like things about like misogyny and like I was like, you know, women can only hire something like still on for something I mean, like that's a big like, no. And I was like, and you're making me do that. I can Google, like look up how to use the stuff on YouTube. Like I don't.
French press, yeah. It just, I mean, the ratios, I guess. Yeah, you can look that up on the internet.
Anyway, and so and now you just like.
I have the same trouble. I never had to have a roommate despite being desperately bored because I either slept in my car or I was a live-in nanny.
Yeah.
I lived with a family, but I was living, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I never ran into that, and then I moved to junior high, and all of the cook, and I was like, well, you know, I actually like to cook. Yeah. So if you handle the grocery on this stuff, then I'll handle the cooking on this stuff, and I think that's fine. It's okay to just he wouldn't buy things when they were low, so that I would go and I wouldn't have things to cook with because I'd be cooking, and we have like a menu. I would be like, this is what I'm making, so presumably you would know what you need to buy. And so I had to cut. I was like, I can't. He was like, well, I didn't buy the milk because I still have milk. And I'm like, we have 4 ounces of milk for a family. Like, you can't. It's not going to work. Good effort. But he wasn't. No, but he was much more graceful than I. I'm really sorry you feel like that.
Yeah, it's just been a little ridiculous. Sorry, I'm also like, I'm just doing like 12 things at once, including I just felt like really the need to do this. Okay. Oh, God.
Is that right? So I almost watched him like fucking traffic. I just thought we were gonna have to go to another nurse fucking fast. Why is there? But I called Andy Nutty. I'm so glad because Andy and I know each other. We have a mutual friend. And so I called her and I was like, I lost my job with me here. I stopped trying to do something really fast. Super overworked. I slept with production. I don't know what I'm going to do. To be here. Like, I'm going to represent a new person.
When I originally asked
that's how that works.
I said, we have a congrats.
What? Do you still need help?
I mean, you already told me no, but if there's
I mean, I need volunteers.
Are you guys looking for people?
I noticed.
Yeah, no, I really never do that. But Arizona, yeah. Okay.
Oh, great. Do you know who they are?
So maybe that's just
Olivia's not going to go and come to the house maker about those people who find out that they're coming from these other people not going to hire her. I don't think that's true.
It's also the
I didn't know you didn't feel
That's a really great point. I don't know what her relationship is. I mean,
last night in the library, I think I tried to like water. And I was, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? But like, so who, but like, is it, yeah, is it, do you know what I mean?
Because what happened was, so in 2016, and like in working the same office over and and Olivia alleged with no like accommodation, and it was one thing she wanted to be on one side of it I heard that she wanted to be but on the other side that she wanted all the work arrangement set up was like accommodation. You mean you're I mean, both of those things are interesting, so I don't know what it is, but I guess I kind of think and that's what was happening with all the background. And this is under today, she works out and we're like, I think I really lost the part of luckily. But that never came either.
Oh, I wonder, is that okay, is that when
so apparently the funding never came through from the and so that she just did that she would have a no, I mean I don't know, I haven't
like I can see what they need and that's more about it. Because you're already familiar with the abstract. That might be
I'm good. Actually, I'm not good. That's how much work I have. I have so much work that I'm just perpetually
well, and that's where
right. I think that's
Well, we're hearing, I mean, and drafting, track record is decent, but formatting seems rough. And then the other thing is that all of this research, or just say, like it's great, and then just having to give us access to it. And I think a lot of people are working on change.
Yeah, I needed to talk to you about that. I just don't.
Jim's radar is here. Is it about me? Is it about me right now? And if it's not about me, it's not about me.
I feel like he doesn't hold grudges or like.
He doesn't. And no, I mean,
they just haven't emailed me in months, and I said like I am like through my
when I quit mental health, with him.
That doesn't shock me. Color me surprised, Meg.
They were partners, but they were giving scholarships and then some other stuff.
Yeah, no, I haven't.
I don't think it's him. I just like.
That could be true.
Yeah. No, they haven't emailed me, so I feel like I should be like, hey, I'm moving to different work opportunities. So I feel like, yeah, I'll just email them and be like, hey, like, we can revisit this conversation in the future if you ever need additional help, but like, I'm moving on to other opportunities right now since you haven't contacted me. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I say do it. And even if he's blustery, coming back, just ignore him.
I mean, he's ignored me for like 2 months. So, I know.
A genius. But still.
I've worked with him. I mean, I was legal for. You're my senior quote. Hey, you're one to talk to me.
What? Everyone I don't care about numbers.
Oh, thanks.
You don't have to leave. Thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you for asking.
Feeling summoned.
Okay, welcome back everyone. We're going to get started again. So when we left our discussion right before the break, so we had a, Molly, do you want to throw the numbers up there again?
Yeah.
We had a proposal for increasing that dollar amount, that first increment related to the mortgage and rental assistance. It came from Jamie, and then Jamie also asked a question related to the Girdwood Health Clinic. It's a question about why that's in this stack of proposals and what the thought process is there, and maybe a little more detail to help clarify the purpose of that project. So I was going to turn the baton to John to help us understand that a little bit better.
Okay, thanks. This is actually extremely related to COVID-19's new requirements from the CDC. And just for Jamie, this was not on the bond. The Girdwood Child Care Center, Little Bears, was on the bond, and the people who would pay for it, which is only people in Girdwood, did support it. But for some reason, the rest of Anchorage voted it down. But with this Girdwood clinic, it is new requirements for distancing and so on,
Thanks, John. And Forrest, did you have something related to Girdwood?
Yeah, I had a question on that for John and for Jason. I'm sorry to interrupt there, but John, did you get an answer to that question we talked about offline, which was, does all of the Girdwood have to come in this batch, or can it be also spread across the 3, given the nature of the capital project?
Judy might be able to answer that one better than I can, but Chris, are you there?
Yes, sure. Through the chair, Assemblymember Dunbar. I think if you're talking about spreading the total cost of the project over the first, second, third payment paradigm, I believe that would be doable. Just so everyone's aware, the Girdwood Health Clinics got 2 plans or 2 proposals in front of us. One being the full cost of construction, as you see reflected here, that they could get under contract and initiated this year. Obviously, it's a construction project that would stretch into the following year, but utilizing different construction pricing and bidding methodologies, they could get it awarded and appropriated this year. As a backup plan, though, we did ask them to put together a proposal of what would help move the ball down the field further if they couldn't get the full construction this year. So we do have a backup proposal that is obviously significantly less if we only were able to fund the engineering construction or engineering design and initial construction stuff this season. So we do have options with that, but the 5.5, if it were spread over first, second, third payment, I think still would work as long as we had the certainty that it was coming.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, any other questions? Because I think what I would do is not try to hash through all the details right now, and again, just hear new proposals, so great. Okay, thanks for that clarification for the additional information. So I'm going back to the original queue here, which has me, I have 3 people's names on this queue right now, Austin, Meg, and Chris, for new proposals that have not been articulated in this current list. And so, Austin.
I think Forrest was after Meg too. Did you get him? Because he gave us this one. Oh, you're fine? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So Megan and I and Forrest, and I think Chris was working with some, have all been talking about similar stuff. So I'll take one of them and then she can describe another. The one I wanted to bring up was the assisted living funding. So Chris and Meg have both shared that there are 500 organizations or sometimes smaller, right, Meg and Chris, at-home entities that provide care to the elderly. And because of COVID, the capacity and just, I think, frankly, the interest in being in an assisted living home or any sort of elderly care, Meg is probably better at Meg, tell me the term,
ALH or ALF, assisted living home or assisted living facility. We call them ALFs.
Mm-hmm. So our idea is that we would do some sort of pilot program. I think it's really similar to childcare, not to mean elderly, but in how we're approaching childcare, which is that since capacity is down, these facilities are trying to care for folks who are impacted by COVID and are unable to keep full capacity and therefore under risk of going out of business. And if they go out of business, we have a bunch of elderly folks who have nowhere to go potentially. So I think I would like to put a $2 million program up there. I think that we would need to figure out how to accept applications and what the process would be, and it would require, knowing about the operation and ensuring that they're caring for folks adequately. And then,
go ahead.
I was going to say.
Same proposal?
No.
Different proposal?
Yeah.
Okay, let's just make sure we don't have any big questions or comments related to the assisted living homes, the pilot program of $2 million. Yeah, John.
I can understand the need. My dad was in assisted living and he got pulled out, so and all the stuff over there. What would be the mechanism for helping them? Do we even know? Grants, maybe.
So I think it's similar.
Based on the occupancy that they would have.
I think it's similar to what we did with childcare, which is that you would give grants to the facilities that were now under their typical capacity and at risk of closing, so that they could continue to operate to the benefit of the community and those who think Meg also suggested, maybe for us too, that we include in that PPE and allowing them to follow all the CDC protocols. So I think it could be two-part, a grant to continue operating and then requirements, sort of operational requirements to meet COVID standards.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions related to, yes, Meg?
Has the EOC had requests from assisted living facilities for PPE? That's one of my questions. Or are they knowing to access that program that was available? Because I don't get the sense that potentially they have taken advantage of that resource. So I would like to know that. And I don't have to know it right this minute, but it would go into the structuring, I think, of the program. And I think Austin's right. I think it would be grant-based, like with childcare. We put some guardrails on how to spend the money, but it was like you could use it to fill your vacancy or your PPE or your additional costs. When we're talking about people with disabilities too, and older folks, especially if they have hearing impairments, their PPEs needs might be different, like the shields instead of the masks and some of those things. So I really support doing something like this, but keeping it flexible per operation, remembering that people with disabilities have a huge and wide variety of needs, and our homes are licensed for people with intellectual disabilities, mental health disabilities, and elderly. So there's 3 different distinct categories.
Thank you, Meg. Anyone else questions or comments related to this? Yeah, so see Chris's hand and then Jason.
Yeah, with this category in particular, I hope that we reach out as soon as we make this determination to the trust and seek partnership on this, maximize the investment, possibly double it or even more, because this is squarely in the wheelhouse of the Mental Health Trust Authority.
Thank you. Jason?
I wanted to respond that I will get the answer on the PPE and how have they communicated with the EOC. I do want to just mention that there are more than twice as many assisted living facilities as there are licensed child care facilities in Anchorage, and we appropriated $10 million to half as many. And I've heard from a lot of members that they don't think that's enough. So certainly there is need here. $2 million is going to not necessarily go very far. I mean, I guess we'll have to figure out what that looks like and how we create some sort of grant program that actually does something more than just a couple of $1,000s for all of them. I mean, I think there would likely be a lot that wouldn't receive anything if that's what if this is the type of program that we're left to administer.
And what I see here right now is it's suggested as a pilot, so there's potential opportunity to do something more robust in subsequent payments or otherwise. Okay. Other questions or comments related to the assisted living proposal? Molly, do you see any comments or questions online? Okay, so I'm going back to the big queue, and right now I've got Meg and Chris in that line, and so Meg, you've got the floor.
Thank you. So one of the things we haven't talked about, although it was talked about broadly before, is more in additional child care assistance. I know that the facility-based child care assistance is rolling out now, but we wanted to make sure we added in $5 million for child care assistance. I think that can be my preference, and I won't speak for other members, but my preference is that parent-based grants, given that we're going to have an interesting need, which are kids who don't typically go to facilities, and they're also going to otherwise need to be schooling, even when not at school, if we do go back to a part-time system. And so the impact I have on that is if we funded eligible families that are less than or equal to 20% of the poverty level, we we could, oh shoot, I don't have the final reach, but it's a significant reach. Let me go back and find the number, I apologize. But that poverty level is $65,500 for a family of 4. So we're not talking a lot of money for these families. And this would allow for in-home childcare, perhaps, that someone comes into the home, and it would also hit that spot where we have high-risk individuals, either children or adults. It just provides some flexibility if you can't do facility site-based childcare. And it could possibly be parent-based grants that would go and could be used, even if not in-home, to what Cameron had previously mentioned, if it was stood up additional trail side or campfire type capacity, if that's what parents felt was the best match for them. I'm a little bit concerned about continuing to scale programs until we hear from parents better about what will work best for them and what their employers are going to require. The new EO is back to work from home for the most part if you're able. So I think we just have a lot of variables, and this is the most flexible version of that. So kind of like rental assistance, and I don't know, Michelle has left, but if it could be somehow administered either through a 211 system or that would be my recommendation, is some system like that.
Thanks, Meg. So I see a question or comment from Horace.
Question, and both, but so I'm hopeful that this will be as directed as possible towards the challenges presented by the school start and the inability to have in-person schooling now. And so I was wondering if Meg could speak a little bit to that, if it is intended to sort of be more focused towards that community. And then, yeah, I guess I would also agree with what she said in terms of trying to make it more parent-based rather than the institutions that we've already directed considerable funding towards.
Sure. So yeah, I think it is flexible for the school start and the unknowns that we have, and that's what I was mentioning. It could include in-home care, or I've been hearing some parents, who do have to work outside of the homes working on pod-based care. Parents are really innovating, and this would be a way to support that innovation and being needs-based there. It would also support the needs for other caregiver versions of care, if there are costs associated with that, like grandma's laid off and can't work and you're going to pay your grandparent to do that. So I think it's just the flexible route, as long as it meets some basic criteria that is actually being used for childcare.
Thank you. Other questions or comments, Molly, do you see any hands online? Other questions or comments that folks have about additional child care assistance? Okay, so I think that takes us to you, Chris, if you have an additional proposal that you want to suggest.
Yeah, I don't have a really good number, maybe $250,000 to toilets, public toilets, places for people to poop instead of in the woods. Could be portable. I know that there's
public restrooms?
Yeah, it could be portables, and it's not going to get very much with that small of a number. But I would like a placeholder on the table. I understand that there may be some work, it may come from other funding sources at some time in the near future. But yes.
Can you say public restrooms instead?
And if I might put that with securing public spaces or whatever that category. But Bob was called, or nearby that one. Because in my opinion, they're very closely connected. And I would add, under healthy spaces, I'll call it healthy public spaces, just to allow some context.
Okay, so Chris said that this would be essentially, you're saying bump up that potential piece, or?
Either way, I would just add them nearby together on the list.
Yeah.
And that public space one is kind of public health and safety and business. It doesn't really fit cleanly into either category.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, anybody have any questions for Chris related to that proposal? Felix?
Not so much related to this one, but just wanted to respond to a question that Meg had asked earlier about who could administer the parent-based grants and United Way did say in theory, yes, they could do it.
Okay, so asking the group now, any additional proposals that folks wanted to bring to the table? We're currently, with this current list, as we have it tallied, $6 million over the $116 million mark. So as at least as part of that initial payment, or that first payment. So that's where we currently stand, but want to make sure that we've got, and there's opportunities then to talk about any modifications, but just want to make sure there are not any proposals out there that have not had the opportunity to see some light. Yeah, Austin?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that the indigenous placemaking, sort of wayfinding and signs, we're not sure if it's ready to roll yet. Chris Schutte is working on looking into that, but I think each sign is about 15,000. So if we did a couple of those, it could be in the range of maybe 35,000. So that's sort of a potential for a work project, and we don't know the details yet.
Okay. So it'll be part of that public lands program piece. Okay, thank you. Any additions?
Oh, I just wanted to ask.
Yes.
Is it, I just want to make sure, is that the right bucket for it, is the public lands as opposed to the arts and cultural stabilization or anything like that? I guess
I thought that was direct to organizations,
okay.
not, that was my understanding of that one. Austin, are you?
Okay, never mind. I think that's probably right. I was
Okay.
just trying to see if that was the right bucket for it, but I think it's fine.
Okay, other comments or questions? Any additional proposals? Yeah, John?
I think on that indigenous wayfinding signage, most of those signs we order out and they're made somewhere else, and if there's a job, it's not in Alaska, except for hammering it into the ground.
I don't know the answer to that. I mean, the folks here in Alaska said the signs are being made, but I don't know who's making them. So I think it's something that Chris Schutte is going to coordinate more with us to try to figure out, and then we can make that potentially part of the implementation of that, but I agree, we can bring it back.
And currently that particular, the jobs program has a capital piece to it and a jobs piece to it, so, okay. I believe we're at a place, unless I'm missing someone that has an additional proposal. Suzanne, comment or question?
I have a question, actually, thanks.
Yeah.
To the administration, what's the, I can't tell what the total amount for business relief is here with all the changes, and I'm just curious as to run rate on the existing assistance that's out there.
So through the chair, and the member of the Friends, like you, my crib sheet here has all kinds of scratched out numbers. So I'm a little unclear on the total, but I'm sure Shelley's team can show us real quick. But to your question about the burn rate, I think the burn rate issue is one that we can answer how the pilot project went, which was slightly slower than anticipated because it was a pilot project that required a lot of upfront setting up. But now that it is set up, the burn rate on future tranches of business stabilization funds will be much quicker. But all of that ultimately depends on which particular business stabilization program we're talking about, what any criteria would be for distributing those funds, et cetera. But I think that the short answer is it took us a little while to get the first $1 million out, but that's because we had to build the airplane while we were flying, and it's still.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, and we're trying to do some quick shuffling here so that you can see the package of things that are categorized, at least currently, as economic stimulus, and you can see the combination of the three items at the top, especially those top two related to small business that as part of that have already been approved. And then line 12 is small business stabilization for tourism and hospitality, and then additions to with right now nonprofit stimulus and others that have been proposed. So that gives you kind of a snapshot. Yeah, Chris?
So, I don't know time, but I would like to propose that we reduce the rental program by $3 million, and I hate to do this, but the Visit Anchorage program by $1 million.
Okay, so there's initial, so I'm gonna start getting folks in the queue again. So I saw Chris and then Felix and then Forrest.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, before we do this process of amendments, could we get another printout of all of this so that we can see the whole thing before we start reducing any specific budget?
Yeah, absolutely. That means I'm gonna have to force a mini break on you.
Can I say something before the break?
Yes.
It was very similar though. I'm sort of trying to do the math in my head and on the paper. I think we need to find about $7 million. I think that's about the number that we are currently over. And so once we get this sheet, hopefully it'll show a little better.
Yep, you're right. Hey, good.
I had it at 7.25, so it was interesting that we're a little bit off, but around $7 million we have to find. And so once we get back, that's the number we'll shoot for, I think.
Yeah, and so can you guys give us 10 minutes? Our office is literally across the street. We can jam over and jam back. Okay, or Jennifer can help us do that. Okay, so we're going to send it to you right now, and we'll, okay, awesome. Thank you.
We are. We have to. We have to. 10-minute break.
It is based on what you're saying, yeah. Yeah, we haven't had that talk yet about 40 million, 30 million. Yeah. Which, yeah, we should. Doesn't that,
Yeah.
give us some
Yeah.
So what are you thinking about? Especially if you just we are using a little bit. I mean, we're using 8.5 of it, right? Because of the FEMA. Isn't that part of the contingency now?
That's not, that wasn't.
Okay, I'm just saying, I don't think
We added to.
He hasn't reached out to me yet, but I got you.
So I think early on, it said that FEMA reimbursement at $8.5 million. Because that was put that in for Worksession. We'll just keep it out of 2 and 3, which as it stands, 2 and 3, the concept of that is.
All these other needs.
Oh, okay.
And we don't want to just drive down the road.
And this, so this should show.
No, and they want.
They still come out of it, so when they were still using.
Did it have PDF?
Exactly, it's where the power's at.
Okay.
Yeah, so they, what might be helpful is if we don't have
As a line.
Yeah.
100% you there, and it makes perfect sense, and.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah,
some
because
there.
it's still, no, I'm with you.
So I'll leave that blank.
Which
Reimbursement would be an expense out of the
Yeah.
contingency.
I'm leaving it
blank. All the way full circle.
Yeah, yeah. I like the idea of doing a freeze frame right now.
I have a whole package, you guys. You're welcome to help.
I have some, well, I know.
I feel like I'm 14 again.
But I think getting them up here,
Like I'm 80.
right in between.
Luckily, I don't have to wear it a lot for a long period of time, because I'm mostly in the house.
I'm keeping outright right here, which is so annoying because when you're in a.
just messes up my thinking. I found that.
Yeah, but it is for their eyeballs.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make it so I don't think the rest of this. And that's why I wanted to call, so that we don't bring up.
Okay, so by extended, it goes in.
Yeah. And then it was cool. So it was cool. But it's like a really good. Oh, well, my first question here,
Very quiet.
I just, it wasn't the color, I was so much.
Yeah, it was,
I did, it's blank.
Right.
We weren't weird. We're not as yeah, garbage.
Also, I don't have any action items to for other things. So
I'm doing one community service. That's what I said. Oh, I thought it was mine. I know how.
We're almost doing a little
I have.
it's just really frustrating. We should say that every time I hear someone like, no, we should not. We have no verifiable behavior data behind this list at all. Why would we send the most expensive kind of outreach to this list where we have no reason to target? And so now I'm trying to prove my point by
yeah, I think that's another one of them. Right. Right.
70%.
Those are gonna be the ones that fall off.
We can't take care of those.
You know, and so I just like to be stopping them slowly.
No, this is not, the work that work is not work that I choose to do. That work is work that I do out of necessity.
Oh no. I have one screw on my laptop that it just like, it must be stripped at the top because it gets loose and then it rattles and it drives me bananas.
Yeah.
I just re-screw it every couple of weeks. I should throw some glue on it and then never take my laptop apart again.
That's okay. This is a new laptop that I bought because I left my other laptop out in the
Oh, it couldn't be fixed?
Couldn't be fixed.
No.
I mean, could be fixed, but could be fixed for $1,000.
You might as well just buy a new laptop.
And then I Maxie accidentally spilled PO over this one. So I am down in airport. I have to take care of the laptop.
Also, I bought, so one of my techie friends found this on eBay for $200. And this thing is a fucking monster.
Yeah.
And it does, like, it's an awesome laptop. And I got it for $250.
But so, yeah, I'm just not gonna worry about it because one of the perks is still working and one is really all in because one is all the other ones on. I'm already used to being down for one. I stress me out too, and I'm just never, and I keep having these like liquid spill issues at home. And
Sippy cups only.
Sippy cups only, but also like, well now it's too late because I already spilled water on this to get Apple Care Plus, but like, I'm just gonna get Apple Care Plus on everything. And the unfortunate thing about the kind of laptop that you have is that I am such a disaster. I'm pretty much just talking Apple products right now, like completely send everything over immediately, so I never have to worry about it. I'm like, oh, I thought I spilled water on another computer, I'll just take it in.
I wanted a Mac, and then Mac's husband talked me out of it. He was like, no, just get a cheaper, like, what do you need? And I was like, I need a big screen and a number pad. And he was like, you don't need a Mac.
Yeah, you only need a Mac if you're a disaster.
You're less of a disaster than I am. We're doing here.
Normally, I mean, like, normally I don't have issues taking care of my things, especially about the ready to I guess the only upside is it's all tax deductible. This is money I can't expend.
Yeah.
Continuing to buy myself new technology that the same rate technology that I put water on, or I can get it from the government.
I owe $1,000 on my tax year because I had literally no Schedule C expenses.
Oh, sure.
But this upcoming year, I bought like Canva Pro for myself.
Oh, what about home office?
I didn't have a home office space until this year.
Oh.
Yeah. And so, like,
Are you gonna share?
now I do, but I didn't previously because I just worked at a coffee shop, and I know all that coffee probably should have been tax deductible, but I didn't think I should. So, I'm learning, but now I have a bunch of stuff.
That's my job.
That's my first one.
Well, and I'm pleased to hear that too.
There we go.
I'm disappointed you guys cannot have clear review.
No, we can't.
We're
in an
actually,
open
we're talking
meeting.
about like layoffs and this is
Similar. We're in an open sphere.
But I thought we could, I'm gonna ask Jason.
Yeah, it's more just fun to talk about that, but, I mean, not, Because this is all stuff you can get on committees if you were in a committee. I know.
Then they have to keep
And like a lot of the stuff that you have to do is a bunch of stuff that you would hard.
It would be all bunched up.
Can you imagine all the screening and stuff we have to have out the library and around?
But it's from doing stuff, it's hard. I have to try to do the same kind of things that I would be doing if I was staff in town, except that I would have your email and I would have a list of calendar and I would have.
No, which I'm wondering.
Yeah, we talked about that, but you can't have an access to that unless you're an employee.
Right, right.
Or preview, that is very, because of, IRS rules and stuff. We have to, you gotta really contract because of what new IRS stuff.
Oh, yeah? Thanks, Obama.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Is that Jennifer? Are they sending it?
I think because
It's just hard for us to eat that budget.
Shuffling papers.
2021, first phase, 2022, sorry. Yeah.
Or does that mean I can't work
You could probably start. Yeah, we could implement this stuff.
Are we gonna be able to do included and do the motions?
Yes. I think you know.
And then we have to be able to later, we just have to hear the information.
Yeah, so that's.
And it's a really big difference from yeah. I'm so sweet. Like, I have better health insurance than my dad. So when I went over, especially when I got the bills, they didn't cover like $9,000. My dad was like, "Oh, it's sweet, I'm not so on my health insurance." I'm like, "No, better than yours." Oh, putting the crumbs on my head. We had like these teleemployees that better health insurance. Well, they also go to their union meetings.
I think that's nice, yeah.
We started to
So my point is,
Yeah, I know, it sounds pretty exciting, doesn't it?
I love it.
I know that's how it has to be. I don't think it's very functional. I don't really know what your guys' delegation deal is, but it does.
If you look at the records right now, it's stuff. Me and Andrew did that. I was like, hey, can we do that? I know it's not like,
Are we still waiting for paper? Okay.
We just sent it and she's printing it right now.
Yeah.
forget it.
I'm trying to just make it.
Forget it. I'll volunteer. Give my skills card.
Like, is anyone else there? Like,
I have so many ideas. Probably nothing that Zach hasn't thought of before, but it's just like, And so thankful that we started to see that we better have.
Sometimes. What's it, what are people saying? You gotta be able to turn around and all of that. Oh, really? I really like. Yeah, but he likes to see pictures, it's really something. So, a lot of the people. Yeah. Maybe I was just such a combination of my 8 years. That really gave him a hard time. I don't need to search.
Are you realistic? You're excited.
And I do think that
They're just talking about, so it's just the box. The box itself. Yeah, it is. I know, I'm like, oh, we're 50. Oh.
That's true.
It's like there's,
and it would be challenging because we don't like to turn it. So we're under the
well, I don't even think about it. I mean, these are not. Yeah, what are they doing?
Yeah, I was like, well, maybe you can just figure out an opponent who doesn't need to do it. That's fine. But
You could just say
that's really critical.
3 years ago.
I was saying to your help. So it's like all. Between the three of you, with all the like, so I don't I think about what I need for this. And if something happens to them, I will be I don't so like at first I think we did get more because but it really is like that feels just so I'm not and also but I really don't want to be able to fix my life and all of that. I really want it, but I'm having a hard time keeping the list. Like, I mean, their capacity was 100. I got them at like, with the very good one. I think I did squeeze in. I think I did squeeze in my 80, but I really not.
A lot of clothes.
I know, we're very and it's me, right? Like, I'm just doesn't have to make family, doesn't have to make, I mean, just like,
I know. But all the needs argue about whether they should.
I mean, it would be very easy for me to
There would be, yeah, what are they doing?
like, I would be fine if I was but it's hard because, like, I remember that we on very considerate. It was just really important to me always my inner today with all the cultural differences to get in my space. And like, even if there's like a really expensive, still need to like keep that. When I like keep it one shot on your agenda, I don't want to doing that. I'm just so committed. But the truth of the matter is that we're like, she's been And so my perspective on it is like, it was a really, and I don't
She just pulls out like facts and it's like, oh, I'm confused, but it's like, this assertion doesn't make sense. She's complaining on saving her. And all these people are like, who are you? I have the idea. It's like there's just some underground.
You're not invited, you don't want to come. I call later.
Yeah.
Young Democrats.
Oh, yeah.
Only Democrats. Very few of you come through with the reciprocal volunteer. Yeah. But I did cut down.
Already ordered the dressing.
That's what it feels. But like, I mean, I'm personal and I'm open dressed and and then there's like some of these with really good so there's like, I'm really lucky. There's, I'm so lucky. He is probably the most unique prejudice I think for the label. I was done, I don't even think I was saying my name, but like, yeah, she didn't have to be loved. No, I don't, I think it's cool.
Oh, that's great that he thinks that.
He's so good. Have you, we watched The Politician, have you seen it?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what it's called. I was like, let me know if you're ever going to say that with him. Yeah.
Well, I just also heard.
Yeah. I feel like actionable, so I'm not just like a pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sit with them.
But once we talk to all these people, I mean, the only way that I think we do it there, like, is to put
Oh, yeah.
But we're really
on the floor of the elected system, and then standing people down in the team, and have and hold this people that I'd like to think that the understand that I would not mind the standing back there. And then I can see other things, you know, like the
Anyway, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And,
Cool.
And then,
ultimate subjectivity is knowledge.
being not cynical is always stuff. If I can figure it out. But if we can't, I mean, if we can't write it,
They want us to like, they already said. Yeah, on the back. Yeah, you're like,
Yeah, we're waiting for Jennifer.
Okay.
Now we're starting to like, if people want, you requested, sir. The full list, but.
Okay.
Let's get started again.
Oh, no. Oh, my gosh.
That's that was
What's that?
That was like a nice, like, decorative,
Hi.
decorative one. That would be,
High energy, people. Okay. I know, I just like it. I get more and more energy, and then as soon as 5 o'clock hits, then it's not so much. Okay. Molly might think I'm lying right now. Okay. Okay, so we're going to get started despite not having the full, she's swooping in. Oh, good timing. So we're going to get started with the opportunity to consider the full package, and where there are some entry points for some negotiations. So I understand that folks are having some conversations during the break, and in the interim, Jennifer is also passing out the complete list. And Jennifer, when you get a chance to, could you also email that to everybody? Okay, she's going to also email it to everyone, but it is also up on the screen right now. So I would like to open the floor for suggestions. Again, in this first payment column, you can see we're currently about 6.67 or close to $7 million over that $116 million. So are there opportunities to shift some of those big components of those proposals over into other areas? Okay, Chris, gotcha.
Thank you. Just to restate what I had before, it would be $3 million out of the first year, or first pool of the mortgage relief there, and then it was $1 million from the Visit Anchorage. And I think that the mental health first responders is somewhat high from the actual need, but I'm not going to go there yet.
Okay, just a second. So really quick on the floor, Chris has suggested related to, because Molly's trying to follow what you guys are saying. So, and also Molly, you might want to just blow this whole thing up a little bit so we can see the, there we go. So you were down below. Did you just shift that number to?
I didn't change it, I just highlighted.
Okay, and you might put the suggested, so I don't know if we want to discuss these one at a time. So I hear first, the suggestion is like bringing down that 18 million to 15 million, so that theoretically puts those additional $3 million out into the second and third payments. And then there was
no, that's not what I was suggesting. A second of the first one, just take the $3 million out. You don't have to move it. Let's just leave it at 15 in the first, and you have the 5 in the second.
Gotcha.
20.
Okay. So you're suggesting a modification. Okay, here. And then the other was for Visit Anchorage. Tell me again.
Just minus the $1 million, 2,600.
Okay, 2.6 million. And then you're thinking that first responders is a little bit high, but no specific.
I'm going to let someone else tackle that, but I
okay.
think believe it's high.
Okay. Yeah, you don't need to do anything with it.
Yeah, the mental health responders.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything with it right now. Okay. Thank you. So I see Suzanne and then Meg's hand.
Thanks. Just actually a question, clarification on right now, is our goal to get that first payment column down to 116 million and then just ensure that the second and third, the total amount is 156 million?
That's correct. That would be my understanding of a process that would be the most helpful.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And then Meg.
Thanks. So I'm trying to track on the second or third amounts here. One of my thoughts is, I don't know what the timing on the Anchorage's need is, but it seems like it might be able to be pushed out a bit. I know, or at least divided. So that's a thought, is to divide that in half and possibly push the second half into the third payment.
So 1.3 and 1.3?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if there's specifics as to the need and the timing that I'm unaware of, someone should speak up. Because I haven't been tracking that one 100% close, but I know some of it's to try to rebuild for next summer, and I don't know the timing of that work. Similarly, on the mental health first responders, there could be the $4 million I think is definitely needed to seed that and get it up and running, especially as we work toward a more work from home environment again for mental health. But it could be divided in half into 2 separate payments, if that would be helpful, because the first part of that will be really the full work on either scaling or design, and then the next half will be the first round of the implementation. So there is a natural division point in that. I don't know if it's half and half, but it could be half and half, and we could definitely work within that framework.
Okay, just press pause for a second so Molly can catch up. On line 20, so I would yellow highlight if you were highlighting the changes for 1.3 and 1.3. And then for mental health first responders, the $4 million that we had sliced out of the reserve up above. Meg was suggesting $2 million and $2 million, so splitting that. And
2 million in the first bucket and 2 million in the third bucket.
Okay. Thank you. Forrest, I see your hand. And then Chris Schutte, I've got you on in the queue as well. Go ahead, Forrest.
Yeah, I mean, unless my math is off, I think we're actually there.
Let's check it out.
Or very close to there.
You are 622,000 above the funding line. So, and then when we look over here, let's look at total though, Molly, if you could give us a sense of that.
Okay, and above is bad, or above is good?
Above means you have underexpended so far.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're there. I was going to suggest, related to the conversation John and Jason and I had, that we divide the Girdwood over a couple of payments. So I was thinking 3.5 million initially, then 1 million, 1 million, but I'm open to John or Jason's or Chris's idea on, practically speaking, what's the smartest way to do that. But I do think, given the nature of the project, that we could spread it out a little bit. I mean, this doesn't spread it out, practically speaking, but spreads out when we would be actually paying the money. I mean, maybe Chris.
Is there, a response to, Jason or Chris? Jason?
Yeah, so through the chair, Member Dunbar, I do think it presents a little bit of a challenge if we are expecting the Girdwood Health Clinic to go forward with the full construction bid package, especially if we're saying you can only have a bid now and then in the outer months when the second, third tranches are released by the state, you'll get your full amount. That essentially pushes the execution date of their project into that third payment time. So I'm a little hesitant to say that this could work well for them, but we're certainly willing to answer that more fully if it helps the group. I just need a little bit of time to do that. I can't answer that on the floor right now.
It looks like Jason might have some additions.
And I would just add that part of how we have typically made the programs work so far is we hold on to the money until it is absolutely needed for us to push it out. And part of that are some of the federal requirements in terms of us holding on to it and taking advantage of being able to collect the interest and things like that, because we obviously put this money into a low interest account that we're making money off of it as well. So from a practical perspective, I don't know if it matters either way all that much, because we would ultimately hang on to it until we actually had to push it out. So that meant that it wasn't until early October that we were pushing one of the payments out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it matters.
Can I propose an alternative then? Maybe 4.5 million in the first, 1 million in the second, and don't worry about the third, and they'll get it during the second payment.
Okay, so there's a couple of other folks in the queue. So, Chris Schutte, did you have something else related to this proposal?
I forget now, I'm sorry. Oh, no, it was on the previous item on the visiting.
Oh, okay. Did you want to say something about that now since you've got the floor?
Sure, yeah, sorry. Just that the remarketing campaign, the total ask that we put into our proposal represents less than half of the normal annual revenues to that entity. And so they essentially have, they're counting on half a year's of revenue to rejigger an entire organization and entity to poise Anchorage for both the rest of this year and the coming years. So I think to that point, we can work with where the assembly lands, but our original proposal
Okay, so I want to make sure I'm not prematurely closing topics. So visit Anchorage, what I heard, Chris, is that that's potentially workable. And Molly, if you could scroll down for us really quickly, I want to see where we are with our total after having made those adjustments. So now we're 1.6 million above our funding line, or I'm sorry, below our funding line, meaning we've not expended $1.6 million, so award balance as you see there. And so anybody else, questions or comments related to Visit Anchorage? Okay.
Balance is, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit lost at the bottom of the spreadsheet.
Yeah, the balance at the bottom, this shows you for the first payment, we're currently still have $1.6 million of the $160 million that could be expended. Here, 8.4 of the 19 million, 13.7 of the 19 million for a total of 24 million that's still available. We have not yet talked about contingency and all of that kind of stuff that still needs to be brought in front of the group. Did you see something related to that, Felix?
Yeah, I suppose related. So I think you all will notice that contingency is one of the items, we just haven't filled it out. And I think, in essence, the way that I'm looking at this, obviously we're going to make more adjustments, but in the end of the day, whatever's left in the second and third payments is going to be the contingency, sans the FEMA, which we've already talked about earlier. So that's sort of the way that I'm looking at this, because I think at the end of the day, we're going to want 0, 0, 0 in all three of us.
Thank you. Okay, is it related to that, Chris? Because we've got a queue.
It was in the queue a while ago.
Can I just ask, is the FEMA piece still in the second and third payment up there?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. Chris, you're second in the queue that I've got here, and Crystal's before you. So, Crystal, you've got the floor.
Okay, a couple of things. I guess one of them is that there is this trend that we might be on in terms of splitting up payments between first and second payments and trying to free up some other money, for other uses. I think we could do the same kind of a thing with the, with the cultural pillar stabilization. We have that list of different organizations and entities that we wanted to make sure made the list, like the zoo and stuff. Okay, so we could do the same thing on that, I am assuming. Now, I know the zoo has asked for about $600,000 over a 6 to 8 month period. That would cover their losses for the next 6 to 8 months. So obviously they don't need that for the next 3 months, so we could certainly, if we're going to add that amount, because we didn't actually put an additional amount in that $2.5 million figure, we kind of left it open as a placeholder. So anyway, so I'm suggesting that if we were to split some of that up so that there's a second payment to those entities, it would probably look the same for them. So I would suggest, let's see, how about we reduce the one side to just the 2 million, and then put the other side at 1.5 million. Because I'm thinking the Wildlife Conservation Center is probably not that far off from the zoo as well. But we could also adjust that amount a little bit better when we know more, when we get closer to that second tranche.
Okay, so what you were suggesting, Crystal, was in essence a bump up by $1 million. So increasing that total cultural pillars to 3.5, 2 million in the first tranche, 1.5 in the second tranche.
Right, and then it would be basically giving people some of that money in the first round and then the rest of it in the second round. Because again, we didn't put any figure in there that would actually represent what the zoo or the Wildlife Conservation Center might need. But now we have that 600 million that I know the zoo says they would need.
Okay, thank you. I'll just remind folks, so if you cruise down to the bottom, and so Chris, I've got your hand next, but if you cruise down to the bottom, now you've actually got 2.1 million that is not accounted for.
So, and that's what I wanted to actually do the second part of my
Yeah, go for it.
The other thing is, we really haven't talked a lot about business loans, and I don't know if there's more information about how that funding that we've already allocated is actually being pushed out. Again, now we're looking at bars being closed down, restaurants being closed down. We know there's going to be a significant impact on those kinds of businesses alone. We're going to do another month worth of, I don't think the mayor's calling it hunker down, but anyway, it's still the idea that people are being encouraged to stay home and not go out there shopping unless you absolutely have to. So we know there's going to be a bigger impact. So I would like to see some form of the of business stabilization funding being increased. Now we have the one section that says version 3 on tourism and hospitality, where I'm hoping that we're not trying to limit that to those types of businesses, unless we can show that we're just not using any of our business loans and grants at this point. But like I said, I don't think that's going to be the case after this next round of hunker down. And I'm just using that term. I know the mayor said something else, but we all know what that means. So.
Okay, thanks, Crystal. So what I hear you expressing is a desire to bump up that $5 million, and was there a figure that you had in mind?
Well, if we've got about $2 million at the bottom, then I would suggest at least adding that to that particular group. So, and I think we could even need more, just depending on what kind of impact the most recent COVID effect will have. But anyway, it's a start, something to talk about.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so what gets communicated to the, I mean, I know this is been part of the discussion, is to the public is that primarily we start out with that rental and mortgage piece. I think then followed by, unless I'm missing something, is the small business stabilization would be the next tier of, or large chunk of funding. Okay, Chris, you've been patient.
Yeah, I think that whole last exercise we went through, we need to at some point stop and consolidate around what we have. We don't need to be spreading these costs across the year. We should, as much as we can, figure out what we're going to do with the first part. I take somewhat a program with the idea of adding any money to the small business grants, and I would like to see that money go away and us to direct every small business person to shout like mad hell at your legislators and the governor who's withholding $290 million from the state of Alaska. We're doing a disservice when we're giving them cover for failing to do their job by taking money away from other projects and proposals that are essential for our community. And it's important to support our businesses, but at the same time, we're literally taking and creating cover for failure to perform. And it just causes my ire to raise. And we're now taking money from projects that we would fund immediately and moving them off until the next and the next tranche in order to cover for the failure to deliver. And it's depressing, it's enraging, it's all the things. And we're going to be blamed, of course, for their failure to act. And it's just a shame.
Thanks, Chris. So I've got Austin, and then Meg, and then Jamie in the queue.
I actually have one last thing. One thing we don't have up there, and it became really clear shortly a minute ago, is that we are laying all the burdens on the administration to do this incredible work, and we haven't added any staff. And I believe we should add a temporary hire to the administration of between $500,000 and $750,000 in order to administer this pool. And so I'm not sure where that fits in and how, but as we all know from our own recent conversations, it's hard to do this work without a team.
That was an additional line. Okay, was that to administration? So I see municipal response, adding to administrative capacity, and did you say $750,000, Chris?
$500,000 to $750,000, but to manage the grants and programs created under this funding scheme.
Okay, thank you.
Or we add a percentage of OEM to the project.
Okay, so there's a queue, and if people could please honor that, and also, please be brief in your comments. Okay, so that was Chris. Thank you very much, Chris. Austin.
Thank you. So Chris Schutte and Beth Nordland and I have been texting, and I might have Beth just say a minute or two. It looks like there's agreement among all of them, Chris, Beth, Dr. Josh Duran, that they could do build a plaza and install 2 signs related to the Indigenous placemaking project for $40,000 in 2020. Their Anchorage Parks Foundation is interested in doing a little bit more than I think. Oh, and that $40,000 could come out of the work project, so we wouldn't even have to change the budget. I think there's a desire by the Parks Foundation to do a little bit more, and so I just want to give Beth a second to explain that first 40 and then what you would do with them with more, and very, very quickly.
Yeah, so we have 2 signs under fabrication currently for the Indigenous placemaking movement. One will be installed at Chonchu, and one is somewhere around Westchester Lagoon. And those have gotten through all the public approval and they are underway, but $40,000 would go to building plaza around those 2 signs. And so it would be well used. With $310,000, we could build 30 signs. We could have materials, and then we could get the fire bag fabricated. And I'm sorry you're not looking at the image right now, but the fire bag needs to be fabricated out of cordon steel, and that's local work. We are currently having 2 done right now, so we know we can do 30 more in the next 5 months if you wanted to forward fund fire bags.
Thanks, Beth. Was there anything else related to that?
Can I speak to this?
Yeah, go ahead, Forrest.
2 things. John asked what's a fire bag. A fire bag is a traditional Dena'ina bag where they would carry embers, and it's part of the design of the sign. It's maybe a metallic imitation of it that's on each of the Indigenous placemaking signs. And I know that because I'm on this board, which is why I have to declare conflict. And I guess I would ask the administration, if you go forward with funding for the parks, for this particular Parks Foundation project, could it come in a separate resolution so that I can declare a conflict and not vote on it, but can vote on the overall package? The guidance I received a couple years ago, if we recall, was that I could vote on something that broadly focused, that broadly had a lot of funding and they were a part of it, but if it was specific to them, there was like a line item for them, I wasn't really supposed to vote on it. So, I don't know, just something to ask the administration and the chair.
Yeah, that's something that we can explore further. And, we have to dig up the ruling, which I believe Board of Ethics maybe did a ruling on that. So let's take that up, and then, I think in general, this would be a small part of a really large package. So but we can focus on that.
And so to that end, I was going to move us along because it's not what I wasn't hearing, Austin, that you were suggesting that 1.7 million for public lands will be impacted or needs to be lifted up based on what you just shared.
Well, yeah, if we decided to do the second part that Beth described, then we would change that to $2 million. And so I guess I wanted folks to hear that from Beth and ask questions if they have it, because I'd recommend that we increase it to $2 million.
Okay, questions or comments related to that increased proposal? Yeah, Chris?
For Beth, what's the employment factor that you would anticipate for local people for these projects?
We need a crew of people to install plazas, and we would need it's the fabrication locally.
No sense on how many people?
Fabrication, right. I don't know how many people it would take to fabricate the sign. I know there are 2 signs being built right now. Some of the materials that we would be buying are not local, but the fire bag is for sure designed by a local Dena'ina person. And we need to get them built. I have only seen drawings.
And as far as installation, Chris, could your team work with the Parks Foundation to do that, or how would that work?
Chris Schutte, are you there?
So through
big punchline again, which is asking for an additional 300,000 on top of the 1.7. Yeah, John. Question related to this proposal.
Yeah, a couple. One thing is, the CARES Act funds, if it's something that's already budgeted, you're not supposed to do it. So if you've got two in the works already, those may not be allowed. Someone check that. And now I
What's
really.
not budgeted is the plaza.
Okay, well, I don't know if that's an issue, pay attention to it. So now I'm confused. I mean, mostly my understanding is most of the actual signs are done by someone in lower 48, and then we just plant them, which is relatively low labor. But so this signs, 310K is to make them, but does not include the installation. The installation is really the only, or how much of that is really made in Alaska? I guess are they making the physical sign? So I'm reading the sign. Is that sign that I'm reading that tells me the story made here, or is that somewhere in lower 48?
Forrest, can you describe it looks like the figure 8 that goes around the sign. It's an Alaska Native artist design fire bag that needs to be fabricated here locally.
But the sign that I read that explains all this stuff to me, that kind of stuff is made in lower 48.
No, we usually send that out to get made. It's really that word. The sign is more public art, would you say? That I'm talking about, that would be made out of quartz steel. It has the dentalia and is in the shape of a fire bag.
Yeah, I think that the core of the question is the $300,000, does that mean local employment and local production?
Local fabrication.
Okay. That answers your question, John?
No. I give up.
Okay. I think it's unrelated. You're talking about other signs that are not part of this project. So to be clear on that. So we have a proposal here for an increase of $300,000 for public lands programs. Yeah, so if you cruise back down then, I do have the rest of the queue here, so I'm looking, I did see your hand, Meg, and maybe you have a comment or question related to one of these pros. Right now you are, have overspent by $687,000. Okay, Meg.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if we were switching to just like one at a time. So it was back to Crystal's proposal around small businesses.
Yes.
I am all for supporting small businesses. We have already allocated, and previously we did small business and nonprofit relief together at $6 million. And we've so far put out $1 million of that relief into the economy. I know we have a big need, but I would suggest that that $7 million figure, and I've been talking with Chris Schutte, we definitely have this need for the additional 10 between nonprofit and more small business, but I don't know that we have a $10 million need on August 11th or whatever it is, so I feel like we could push some of that money a little bit further out, and I know that's contrary to what Mr. Constant wants to do, but I think that's really what that gets at, is that total amount of money over the course of time will make the impact, because we're going to see this new set of need roll through with the new emergency order and some other things.
So are you suggesting, Meg, that would this number then come down, and are you saying something more like a split, like at 5, 2.5 to 2.5, or I'm just throwing that out there, but.
It was originally at 5,
yeah.
So if we just take the addition and put it in another bucket, because quite frankly, with what Mr. Bockenstead said, or Jason said, remembering Felix's admonishment to be casual, that once we've encumbered the one, the other will come. It's not like we're pushing it out a long, long way. We're just simply making the ledger work. So I think it still gets to Crystal's point, and what Mr. Schutte has verified, but gives us that ability to balance what we want for our main package moving forward. It doesn't mean we're devaluing it at all.
Okay, Forrest.
Yeah, I just want to speak in favor of that. I think that makes a lot of sense. I do think, I want to reiterate what Chris said as well. The Small Business Relief Program is predominantly a state program. They're $290 million, twice what we are. All this debate and all this storm and drum we've gone through is half of what that program is, and it's just sitting there because the legislature and the governor refuse to act. So I don't want to bail them out, and I do think that this is the way to do it. I think it still has a commitment to these small businesses, but at the same time doesn't alleviate some of the pressure, I hope, on what should be a much more important program. So I'm just speaking in favor of what Mick said. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. And I'm not seeing any hands here in the room, and currently we don't have any online. Chris, go ahead.
Back up to the one at the top, the cultural institutions. If we have $1 million left on the balance, I would like to see as much of that be available as possible early as opposed to later. That's
Yeah, so
I would take the $1 million that's at the bottom and move it over to and leave 500 in that second payment. I think there's substantially more than $1 million, like $1.3 million or $1.5 million at the bottom.
There was 1.3 when I last checked with Molly. Yes, 1.3. And Felix, you have a comment related to that?
Yeah, just I think we should maybe, before we start adding more money, let's step back and maybe do a little bit of big picture here. So two things. So first is what I think of the administration's perspective on the FEMA reimbursement. Right now, we just have FEMA reimbursement set for what we expect through August 11th, but we haven't considered FEMA reimbursement through the end of the year, which you had said is 12. So one is, do we need to consider that as we are putting this package forward? And then two, sort of for the broader group, is around the contingency fund, because as we're doing all of this and setting first, second, and third payment, it is slowly starting to chip away from the contingency fund. So I just want to circle back on that thought and idea.
Yeah, so we'll come to on the bottom line here currently. So if you could take us all the way down, Molly, where we are, just to give us a sense of that. So before we potentially make your suggested edit, Chris, so we are at 1.3 that still has not been expended for the first payment. And then you have theoretically 4.9 or close to $5 million for contingency in the second payment column, and 13.7 in the second, I'm sorry, and then 13.7 in the third, which gives you total unspent 20.7-ish right now. So
that very last one is wrong.
okay, thanks, but close to that.
Yep.
So that's big picture again. So on that point then, what's the group's desire? So we got 1.3 million on the table right now. Yes,
Also, yeah, I want to see if the administration has a response to the question I posed.
Thank you.
As I said earlier, looking out, I think that it would be likely smart to prepare for the need to have roughly $12 million in FEMA match by the end of the year for some of those. So, whatever that looks like in terms of the second or third, 6 and 6 or whatever it is. And then on the second part, the contingency, I mean, I think as we have said, I think from our perspective, having somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million in contingency to figure out what, September, October, November look like is probably wise at this point. So obviously based on where we are now, we're quite a bit below that.
Yeah, and I guess just to put a finer point, so we're right now, if we're sort of zeroing out everything, we're at the 16, almost 17 million for contingency right now.
Okay, so I think the question before you is where, if any place, are there opportunities for adjustment for second or third payments?
Is now a good time to talk about alternate funding sources for some of this? Because have some other things before us. And so some of these things are in some of those other things, alcohol tax or otherwise. And I don't feel like we've had a very comprehensive conversation about why there's overlap.
Okay, first I've got Crystal in the queue too, so I'll take Crystal's question and then we can come back to this if that's going to be a helpful way to clarify where we might land. Crystal, you've been patient, go ahead please.
Thank you. You know, I guess I'm just kind of wrestling with this whole idea of having to have a fund of some sort. And it seems to me we've done a pretty good job of picking and choosing here. And with that 1.3 million left, maybe we want to just keep that right now as a contingency fund for this first tranche. And if we do that, it also gives us a little bit of a chance to watch what happens with some of this funding in the next however long, before we know we'll get that second batch of money there. So anyway, I guess I'm just kind of throwing that out that, you know, maybe we're kind of done with some specifics right now. And if we give ourselves a little bit of leeway with the 1.3 million, we would even be able to maneuver that. And I am a little bit concerned about where the reimbursement comes from on the FEMA money, you know, our 25% for our portion. So anyway, just a thought. Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Crystal. Yeah, and I saw a couple of nods when you suggested that we might be, you know, close to done, and maybe with your suggestion, Meg, to think about where there are places here where other revenues might contribute to these needs. We can have that discussion unless folks have other suggestions for moving dollars in pieces around at this point for first or second or third payments. Okay, so we did purposely allow time on the agenda, so this is at least like that initial proposal and list of recommendations, which brings you to about 15.6 in contingency funds currently. It does zero you out, but actually what I should recognize is that you do have, as Crystal suggested, 1.3 in a contingency fund in the first payment, in addition to the reserves piece that's up above that goes to, Molly, if you could scroll up to $21 million that's currently called, what just happened there?
I don't understand those numbers. What are those numbers that just went in?
Yeah.
I just moved I can take them back out again. I just moved the difference to the contingency.
Yeah, it's just showing you that that goes into contingency, and so it zeroes out your columns.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep, and so you can go ahead and repeat that exercise, Molly. Yeah, that's okay. And if you scroll, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that there's still some room with the piece that's currently allocated as the $21 million. So that's where you stand currently. So just wanted to see if there are any big concerns, comments, or questions right now, knowing that there's potentially some opportunity with other revenues. Go ahead.
Just wondering, so we'll come up with something today, we'll turn it back to Jason and team, and then they'll give us feedback on what they think, and
yeah, and actually, thanks, because you asked that earlier, and I think it's good to repeat that, because it's important for us to know that, yeah, there's an opportunity for additional conversation here. So with that, I see a couple of hands. John, did you have a hand up and I missed it? Yes, please, John, and then Forrest.
Okay, following up on that, so the process here, so we've done this, goes to administration, you guys will come back with something, and this is for the 11th, and is it decision time on the 11th? Because I've learned recently the public really likes to see what we're doing, and if we get this huge program, you know, days before the decision point, maybe that's the way it has to be, but I want this out there for the world, so thanks.
Felix has a comment related to that.
Thanks. Yeah, so maybe you weren't here for that discussion, John, but so that $50,000 contract that we approved on Tuesday for Northwest Strategies, that is the money that we're using to get all of this out to the world. So that is going to be out. The public's going to be able to see it, comment on it, and I think on Yeah, I think the idea is August 11th, we bring this, we might have another work session, and I have to think about how all that works, but we get the public feedback, and we do all of that before the 11th, and during the 11th too.
Jason, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No.
Okay. John, follow up?
So like the public will have 3 days or realistically?
No, the hope is that the public has as long as possible. I've been emailing Northwest Strategies while we are here, and we'll try to get it up as fast as we can, John.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so this version would go up, or do we have an administration one coming back that would go up?
I think that's a TBD.
Okay.
Yeah, and as part of our work, we're definitely packaging all this and getting it out. What we told Felix yesterday is as soon as the close of business on Tuesday or sooner if possible is our goal. And we could also work with Northwest Strategies just to think about the priority pie and those things that would be valuable for the public to see at the big picture level. Because this feels real intimidating at first glance, but just, really in general, assembly, how are you allocating? So, okay, Forrest, please.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, if this exact proposal came to me on August 11th, I would vote for it. This is something that I could support right now. But the administration gets another bite at the apple, and the public gets to give us their comments, and perhaps that'll persuade us for something else. But I would hope that, at least from the administration's perspective, that they try to get as close to this as they can, because I think it will make things easier on the 11th. And the reset that has now been issued, I think makes this even more timely. I think we need to try to get this money on the street as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Forrest. And I think I saw Chris's hand.
Thank you. When the package is completed, whenever we get past this process, I would really love to see a second version of this table that has a summary of each of the categories in a total, and then a description of what that category is from the previous framework, so that it's all kind of consolidated into subheads and that really clearly communicate, we're investing this in housing and homelessness, this in our, that would be a very helpful way for it to be tabled out so the public can really consume it.
Molly's trying to give you on-demand services right now, but yes, we have the ability to do that. So I'm excited to be able to share that with you. But if you want a quick glance, can you add the percentages just for fun? Yeah. This is where you're at, but I wanted to hear some other comments or questions. Yeah. Oh, Crystal, please. Crystal, go for it.
Thanks. Just real quick, I just wanted to add that I think one of the things we need to make sure of too is that the processes that we do have in place for getting this money out really does get to the need. What I don't want to hear is, well, I don't qualify, or it wasn't enough, or anyway, whatever the excuse or the reason might be. I just want to make sure that what the mechanisms that we have for really getting this stuff out to people actually gets on. And I think there have been some other comments along those lines, but I just wanted to reiterate. Thank you.
Thanks, Crystal. Jason.
Crystal, you actually made a really good point that I've been meaning to comment on, which is to say that through all of this, it has been our hope and intent that anything that we put out does not disqualify any groups or individual from applying for this funding, and we want to set that expectation. But I don't know if that's necessarily true in the reverse, which is to say, I think that there is the potential for some of these that if they accept some of the municipal funds, the way that the current programs are set up with the state or the feds, that they may not qualify there. And that is certainly a decision that the individuals will have to make as they're applying. But from our perspective, I completely agree with you that we want to make sure that there's as few strings in terms of that as there are possible.
Thank you.
That's what I wanted to hear, so thanks.
Thanks, Crystal, and thanks, Jason. Yeah, John.
It's part of your presentation here, I think, should include a comment that Chris has made fairly strongly, is that the state has $290 million that is not yet allocated. So it shows our piece. And then also, I think the administration's point that we won't know by the time you're done, but that the pieces in Congress that are very heavy with small business support and so on, and have at least some paragraph on that, because that's a huge part of this package.
think we're ready to consider Meg's suggestion that we think about those other funds or other opportunities. Yeah, go ahead, Meg.
I have a mechanics question.
Yeah.
So we have a couple items before us that already, one's encompassed in here, which is the VOA mental health. So I just want to think about whether or not we, I would prefer to see it packaged in with everything else, quite frankly, and set the other one aside, but we can figure out the mechanics of that. And what we don't have, and we do have an item before us with a $90,000 statement of economic effects that comes out of CARES, which is the Office of Equity, and it's not accounted for in here. We don't necessarily have to get into the merits of that, but that's a CARES Act related funding proposition that we haven't addressed. So I was just doing a little bit of mental housekeeping on those two items. So I don't know if the administration has some particular thoughts about how to proceed or how we prefer to proceed. And then the last thought is, I really like this package. I would really like to be able to go out and get feedback with my constituents on it, meaning that I understand the administration's going to go back. I would honestly love to see that more as an S version so we can compare and contrast as we have the conversation with our constituents. Because it may just highlight different priorities. It doesn't mean they can't ultimately be reconciled, but to really be able to take this, start that conversation now, and then highlight what might change as it comes out of the administration's office. Thanks.
Thanks, Meg.
On the first question about the mental health and the Volunteers of America, from our perspective, I think it's fine to kind of be in this package and then kind of the resolution that is hanging out that can just die.
Can you guys remind me, is that the mental health clinicians, the $1 million? Okay, thank you. Sorry.
And then in regards to the specific chief equity officer position, I don't think it needs to be added to this because it has been our intent that in the $1.5 million that the Assembly appropriated before with the Administration Flexibility Fund is that's where we would pull that from.
Thank you. Okay, other questions? Molly, do you see any questions? Hands up on the Zoom? Okay. So I think that does take us to the place in the agenda where we wanted to consider, I think at least at a high level, some of the alignment and relationship to other opportunities. And so that's certainly our alcohol tax revenue projects, and then potentially future considerations for 2021 budget items. But so I'm open to suggestions for how we want to address that, or there's some clear items that we wanted to consider. So I'm happy to see any hands for folks that want to share thoughts or ideas related to that. Yeah, Meg?
Okay, there are a few that are directly related. The Healthy Public Spaces Unit, that kind of work was also contemplated in the alcohol tax, and it might just be a time differentiation. And if that's the case, then I just want us to be clear on that, or if that that particular item, gosh, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tired. If that particular item only takes us through December 31, I think that one had some overlap. And then I believe, and I just would want to verify that pre-K here just takes us through December 31, or does it take us through the entire school year? Because I believe there was a pre-K as well. So those are really the main two pieces of overlap. I will speak really quickly. The other overlap is the mental health first responders. And there may be some overlap there too. I think it will become more apparent with that second bucket of money as we work through getting the design of the system, where that overlap may occur, but hopefully we can move that through quickly to know in advance of additional alcohol tax discussions. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Jason?
To try to answer both of those, on the pre-K, I believe that the way that it would work out is it's this amount, along with what they have found, would fund it through the school year. So it doesn't end on December 30th the way that they fund their budget, is my understanding. But we can verify that
have a follow-up on
Okay.
that last statement.
Yeah.
What does $1 million get us, Jason, if it's just through the end of this year? That's a considerable amount of money toward camp abatement, based on what we've previously allocated. So if it's expanded beyond that, I would love to know.
It is expanded beyond that, and we will get you that information. But as I said earlier, if we are interested in doing year-round camp abatement, there is additional capital requirements needed in the amount of roughly $500,000 in terms of additional equipment and things like that, and we can get you that information.
I thought we couldn't buy capital with CARES Act funds. Maybe I'm confused.
We can.
Oh,
Yeah, we actually did talk about that at the July 17th, and I forget, there's a piece of the segment of the CARES Act funding that's specific to that.
okay. That's been.
I mean, a lot of this stuff in here is capital related. I mean, the Birdwood Health Clinic is considered capital.
That's been a shifting target. I guess I would love for Alex or someone to email us very specifically what the capital situation is.
Sure.
It's in the guidance sent to us by Kate Vogel at our last meeting. She was very specific about putting the language in there. You may buy things that you can keep as long as you buy them for the purpose within the time frame you need. So that, if you go back to that 3-page memo, the specific answer is in Kate's memo. And I would offer that the public restrooms that you have selected right now also have either an alcohol tax or other funding source question in the long-term maintenance. And my hope is actually that we do a rate case with ALU and figure out a way to get those maintained permanently by ratepayers as a service we need to address ongoing.
Great, thanks, Chris. Okay, so I saw a couple of, John, and then John, Austin, Felix.
You know, if we're not allowed to get capital stuff, then we have a $12.5 million.
So I think that just got clarified. Yeah. Okay, Austin.
I was just going to say, I think where some of the confusion came from is that when Visit Anchorage requested $4 million for operations and help with tourism industry generally, and then downtown restrooms and maybe some wayfinding or some infrastructure, Chris told me that we could not use it for that. So there might have been a clarification of the uses since, or maybe that's distinguishable. But I think that might be causing some of the confusion. So if you guys could address that, that'd be helpful.
I think that there is a certain amount of, it depends in some of these, right? But generally speaking, if there is a direct correlation to things that have a direct impact, like COVID, a COVID direct impact, generally those types of costs can be covered by the CARES. I think the other way that we have also read the guidance and gotten clarification is that if it is as part of a jobs creating package, then we can do some of those type of capital purchases or put money towards those types of things. But outside of kind of those two general areas, I would need to know more specifics about kind of what we're trying to do.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Felix?
Yeah, thanks. So Suzanne isn't here, and we didn't really get a specific proposal, but just sort of thinking about how it connects specifically to one of the buckets, the awake DV prevention and intervention may also be connected to the alcohol tax potentially. So right now I'm seeing potentially 5 different items here that are connected to the alcohol tax. So
Can you go just a little bit slow? So we're gonna capture these for you, but
just go ahead.
Yeah.
So then I guess the other question that I have is for the group. So sans alcohol tax, is there either something sort of MLNP sale or 2021 budget related that you all think any of these things ties into? And purposefully asking this question as it relates to the 2021 Assembly Budget Priorities memo that we talked about. guys have left?
Any hands on that?
Well, I guess I could just say that I think that's a difficult question because so much, I mean, we could do any of these if we wanted to. Otherwise, it's just all a matter of whether we want to put that in budget. So I don't really know how to answer that, I guess.
And can I add to that? That you also had the full, we still owe you guys the full list of proposals that were shared on July 17th, so there are other items there too that may be of consideration. I mean, I know the priority ones for CARES Act funding came forth today, but there were other suggestions in there as well. In the July 17th, you guys gave me like 60 different proposals and ideas.
Please let that list die. I mean, at least in my perspective, I left a couple proposals off. I went with the ones I had. They're up there.
Agreed.
Yeah, the list is purely for your purposes. Are there additional priorities for you as an assembly?
Yeah, thanks. So I want to disagree and say that some of those things that we had mentioned, I don't intend on letting them die.
Okay.
No, I'm not saying I'll let the items die, but like the overall list for.
And can I clarify again that this would not be released to the public? This is for your purposes of internal work session, figuring out how you are going to develop a budget for 2021 for our city. Thank you.
I gotta say though, there's nothing like that. Nothing that we do that exists across any email system or platform or even this meeting is not public. And so we just have to operate on the basis that it is public, period, full stop. That's fundamental to
With a giant draft over it.
Yeah.
Or a work session brainstorm ideas. Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Austin?
Thanks, Shelley. So I think I agree with Forrest, right? We had this session 2 weeks ago. We brainstormed, we brought a bunch of stuff in, we had all these ideas, we got something back, and our job was to come here with the things we wanted to put forward. So I view today as sort of a honed down version of 2 weeks ago, and I think revisiting what we talked about 2 weeks ago would either be duplicative or we would bring up things that none of us chose to move forward.
To clarify?
I would prefer not to go in reverse,
Yeah.
and I think it means we wouldn't have a lot of this 11th package. I think everything's on the table today, and folks should bring it up.
Okay.
Or bring it up through amendment, that's fine, but I don't want to have another convening.
My friends. Maybe Felix, you're going to add the point of clarity because I think
Yeah,
there's major
I will
confusion.
add the point of clarity because I don't think we're speaking on the same
We're
level
not.
right now. So yeah, so what I am saying specifically is there were certain proposals that we talked about that didn't get included here, but I am not going to let them die in terms of future budgets and future allocations.
Yes.
So that's specifically what I'm.
Not for consideration for this package. So that is like other ideas that might be future budget items. So you have that list and can use it at your pleasure. Okay, other inputs related to budget priorities, because we were suggesting that that might be really tough to do right now, but any other overlaps to Felix's earlier question? Yeah, Meg?
So I guess I'll just let you all know, because we haven't put it out yet, all email. The Homelessness Committee put forward 2 2021 budget priorities. One was $2.2 million minus the $735,000 already appropriated for homelessness operations of shelters and day engagement centers. And then the other was to pick up year-round camp abatement. The idea was to operationalize those in the general operating budget, not in specific other types of money, whether it's the alcohol tax or CARES Act funding. I understand from today that there is a need to mitigate COVID-related effects with the that's going to take me a while, happy public spaces, healthy, not happy and healthy. It's happy public spaces unit, healthy public spaces unit, so it's not duplicative, but it would work toward operationalizing that ongoing work in the budget. And similarly, as we talk about the $12.5 million in their questions about operations, that has been our proposal to move it into the budget and continue the work the Assembly did last November. Thank you.
Thanks, Meg. Anyone else, any thoughts regarding what Felix mentioned, overlapping or potential other revenue opportunities that we should discuss before we talk about next steps? Any hands on mine? Chris?
Yeah, I actually have two quick kind of semantic issues that I'm hoping we can just touch on. Under 32, is there any reason why we specifically said rural gap and not partnership with the HFC or something? And then there was one other line that I can't see it right now. My brain is about.
Can you pause on that one for a second? Because I think in our original July 17 version, it was more like home weatherization or something more general.
That's an admin thing.
Yeah, and I just don't know why we did that, if they're the only player in town or, anyhow, so that's one. And there was one more, if you slowly scroll up, I know it'll jump out at me, it'll be real quick. Maybe not. Never mind, tired brain.
Okay, Chris Schutte, you have a comment, question?
Yeah, through the chair, Assemblymember Constant, the AHFC doesn't do weatherization work, they give it all to rural cap. So
Okay, they
that's
still
their
are.
recommendation. We are skipping the middle person and going straight to the vendor.
If they're the current vendor, still great, that's fine, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we can reverse action on that one. Okay. Other comments or questions from the group?
Move to adjourn.
We're getting so close. And guess what? It's only 4:29. Yeah, John.
Okay, we have lots of time, so you can take a while. And it actually ties in with, I think, the comment on rural cap is, with the emergency order, I think the purchasing requirements are loosened up, or you just hire someone. And I wonder, on a lot of these projects, particularly trails projects and so on, what would be the process? I mean, is there anything going out to bid, or is it how are contractors chosen to do the work that we're putting out here now?
I can answer that if you'd like.
Go ahead, Chris, and I'll jump in after.
Through the chair, Assemblymember Weddleton, it's currently accomplished in two formats. The monies that the Assembly has already appropriated for the round one outdoor public lands had in it three recipients of those funds. Two are nonprofit partners involved in trail building and maintenance, and then the third, of course, being Parks and Rec as the issuer of the bids for brush clearing, street clearing related to spruce bark beetle kill. So two different methods. The nonprofit partners, it's a grant agreement or a contract agreement between the municipality and them for the projects. And then on the other side, it's the municipality bidding out the work.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
So I guess the question is, an RFP will go out and say you got a week to bid on this, or is it done like that? You say bidding out the work. That's kind of what we do normally, right?
It is bidded, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm going to transition us to kind of a final check-in from each of the Assembly members. So I'm just going to start with folks that are on the phone. So Cameron, I haven't heard your voice for a while. Are you still there? And would you like to provide any closing comments? Crystal?
Actually, I was just about to ask a question, so I guess I do have one question. And this is just a specific one in regard to the Chugiaki River Chamber of Commerce. As you all know, their big fundraiser that really funds them for most of the year has been canceled, and that's the Chugiaki River Bear Paw Festival. So my question is, do I need to actually specifically list them as a line item in this proposal, or is it safe to say that they're already included in one of the pockets that's already been listed?
Who would like to respond to that question?
Crystal, this is Jason, and I'll let Chris jump in if I get anything wrong on this, but think it certainly depends. They would certainly be eligible under a couple of the different programs, the grant programs that we have, but I do not have great insight into what their annual budget is or what they typically raise every single year from the Bear Paw Festival to know if that would be sufficient or if they've explored either the federal or state programs as well to make up for that difference. So without knowing more on that, they would certainly be eligible under some of the programs. But Chris, do you have anything to add or contradict on me on?
Sure, through the chair, some of the member candidates, nothing to contradict these on for sure. I'll add that we have a current relationship with them, and in fact, during this meeting, have been exchanging emails about the magnitude of the impact to that organization and ways to help stabilize it both in this year and moving ahead to 21.
Well, thank you. I can take the question offline anyway and talk a little bit more about it before the 11th meeting. So anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Crystal. Did you have any other closing comments?
No, other than I actually am surprised at how this came together right at the very end, because there for several hours I was wondering if we were going to get to the meat of this, but we did, so I'm thankful. So anyway, thanks.
Thanks, Crystal. Jeannie, are you still there? Any closing comments? I'm going to start to my right. Austin?
No, I'm happy with this. It's great, what Crystal said.
Thank you. Felix?
I'm going to go last.
You can go last. Okay. Chris?
Yeah, no, I have a feeling we would get through it, and there definitely were people wondering, but we are a pretty high-performing group at this time. We've been through a lot of hell together, a lot of challenges, and this is the second of our effort to have this conversation in a long format. It's been really helpful to see where people's priorities are and to really notice how aligned we are in our priorities. And I'm excited to see what happens with Northwest Strategies helping us push this information out and the opportunity for input people to give us. And I can again assert that I'm quite proud to work with this group of people.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to cruise across the aisle here over to John. Any closing comments?
Good work, everyone.
Thank you. Forrest?
Yeah, I feel similarly. I'm not surprised we got here, but I'm appreciative of the amount of work, especially folks like Ms. Alatel and Ms. Quinn Davidson, really everybody, Chris did too. Everybody put a lot of work in before we got to the table. I mean, there was really a lot of effort in terms of developing these proposals, and I really appreciate that. And so I look forward to August 11th. I think, as always happens, sometimes they say plans don't survive contact with the enemy. And the enemy is ourselves. So we'll see what happens on the 11th, but I'm still optimistic.
Thank you, Forrest. Ned?
I'm really happy. I'm not surprised. We worked through the last operating and capital budgets and came through, unanimously. This aligns a lot with our overall budget priority framework, assembly priorities framework. So, and I'm excited to go out and talk holistically with the public about how this fits in with all the work we've been doing and how it can keep us doing the work moving forward.
Thank you. And Felix, how about if I go to administration for any closing comments before I come to you? Okay. How about for you, Jason? Any closing comments?
No, other than I'm looking forward to spending most of the weekend working on all this.
No. Chris Schutte, how about you? Any closing comments?
This is my one chance to contradict Jason Bach and said, I am not looking forward to working.
No Monday, guys? Can't you wait till Monday?
We're all we're trying to advocate for each other's, mental health here. Okay. Thanks, Chris. I don't know who else is online. Carolyn, are you still there? Oh, I missed it. Carolyn, did you have any closing comments for us? No? Sorry. Okay. And then, so I think that rounds us out and takes us to you, Felix.
All right, thank you. First, just really want to thank Shelley, Molly, and Cameron for helping me to put a frame around all of this discussion. It was great, and this is the end of a months-long process. Just imagine if we did this for the actual budget. The next, really want to thank Jason, Chris, Alex, and the administration for all of your work yet to come. Then we just want to talk briefly about some potential next steps, which I will do my best to put these in an email and send them to the team after I get a little bit more, after I mull on these a little bit more. But obviously we're going to have this draft proposal, which Agnevec is going to get to us ASAP. The administration is going to review this proposal and likely get an S version to us. Also, hopefully, rather quickly, we are going to put that S version likely on the addendum, as well as I think we made some minor changes to the framework, I think. So we'll put that S version on the addendum as well. Then I'm mulling over the idea of doing a work session once the administration puts out their S version for us to review that, sort of do one final pass of all of that before we vote and look at this on the 11th. Sort of similar to what we do with the budget when we do sort of one final pass and look at any potential amendments to the budget, maybe setting up sort of a similar process. And then looking forward to working with Northwest Strategies on some of their public outreach that they're going to be doing on our behalf. I will get you all of those details as soon as I have them with Northwest Strategies, hoping to talk with them over the weekend. And I just want to thank the public for joining us for these 2 long all-day meetings. There aren't any additional comments that we have on our Facebook. With that, congratulations, everyone. We did it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Felix, can I just ask a procedural question for the 11th? This item is a public hearing item?
Correct.
And do you know where in the agenda it is going to be placed? Because I'm just curious, because I'm assuming that there will be potentially a lot of interest in publicly testifying, and if there's an opportunity for us to, on the admin side, ensure that there's fewer items potentially that we introduce on the consent agenda on this particular meeting. If there's things that we can push until the 25th, we'd like to, but I just want to hear from you what that looks like.
So I haven't seen a draft of the August 11th agenda. I think we're probably going to get that Monday or Tuesday. I suspect that there's going to likely be a lot of engineering that we're going to have to do with that agenda to make sure all of the pieces fit. And I understand all the pieces, don't need to remind me about that. But yeah, we'll make sure that everything works so that we can get through this item, because I understand how important it is for us to get through this and to get through the AO 2020-66 on August 11th. So looking forward to working with you on that.
I have a quick question. What's the main version if we're talking about an S version? Because
so main version just has the framework and it has a section 2 that's sort of to be added soon for the proposal list.
so then the S version's coming from the administration. I just want to make sure I tracked it right. I'm sorry, because I got lost on what's the main version. So I remember the item now, and then so the S version will include a budget from the administration as the S.
Yes. And then with the potential for us to do a work session on that, because I don't know what the administration's S version is going to look like. I don't know how different or similar it is going to look to what we have just done. I think we're relying on them to do a lot of the crunching and making sure it all works. So they will provide that S version, and then we will likely have some type of work session or something to review that S version, look at the changes that the administration may or may not have made, and then talk about any future changes we need to make.
That of course misses the step by which
version that we have is going to be the version that goes out to the public. And then hopefully when we get the administration's S version, we'll do that as well. But I don't think we can sort of afford to wait to at least get something out to the public, which I'm hearing loud and clear.
Can I ask, so this goes out to us soon, they're going to turn it around, then you're going to release it to the public somehow, then we're going to see how they respond, then if they have an S version, but is ours an S version since we never attached it before?
Yeah, I mean, sure, I guess you could technically say ours is an S version. So, I guess in the end, whatever gets added on the addendum on August 7th will be the S version.
Okay.
And just because of how our process works, I don't know if we're going to have an opportunity to change the administration's version, whatever it comes out, and then put that final version onto the addendum on August 7th.
Got it. And if not, they'll just bring an S1 to the meeting or something, and it'll go from there. Cool.
If I might just add, this version that goes out, it's either a working draft version, a draft version, come up with a title that implicates exactly where it fits in the process, then we get to the S version as the final.
Good? Have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you very much.